Chapter 703. The expert supporting the sky screen was rushing over, but when he realized that the sky screen had been restored, he was confused. Then two figures tore the sky screen apart and rushed out. However, they didn't seem to have any intention of restoring the sky screen. Fuck. The expert protecting the sky screen couldn't help but curse. Can't they go somewhere else? So what if they're fast? Can't they feel anything? No one answered. The two people had already gone far. However, the sky screen had been damaged by them, so the expert supporting the sky screen couldn't ignore them. Bastard! The person protecting the sky screen was furious. What kind of person was this? However, he still had to repair the sky screen. Otherwise, the meteors would continue to tear it apart. Zhuoxiaonian left the sky screen and sped up for the second time. His entire body flew forward at top speed, producing rumbling sounds along the way. He was as fast as a spark as he sped towards the southern sky. In a flash she disappeared, leaving only a wisp of white smoke behind her. Zhuoxiaonian was provoked by Wu Yuding's words. She was really anxious. She directly used the divine origin escape technique and rushed away, gritting her teeth as she flew. Fuck, you're really bold. How dare you flirt with a female classmate? Haha. Did I give you a chance? You want to open a dye factory? Humph, I felt that something was wrong last time. Sword King or something, he was so popular. There were so many female fans waving flags and cheering. Humph, this kid even said that they were ugly. To think that I believed him. Fuck, you're courting death. I'll be damned if I believe you. This time if I don't teach you a lesson. Humph. Zhuoxiaonian was furious. She flew faster and faster. Behind her, the two Guoxian experts who had followed her out of the sky screen were a little stunned when they came out. They couldn't see her anymore? How fast was she? At least there are some traces. Let's hurry up and chase after her. If we lose her and something happens, we'll be in big trouble. The other person sighed. The two of them had no choice but to give chase. In the beginning, they could still see the traces left behind by the sonic boom, but later on, they could only rely on their senses, and later on, the two returning Xian experts were already speechless and could only rely on their initial tracks to chase after him. The two of them were so tired that they could only stick out their tongues. Even if everyone has their own specializations, this girl has just reached the cloud transformation realm. How could she be faster than us by so much? One of them felt that he could not understand it no matter what. This is still the initial stage of the cloud transformation stage? The other man was speechless. He lowered his head and flew as fast as he could. Stop talking. Try to catch up. If you continue talking, we won't be able to catch up. At 7 o'clock in the morning, Wu Yuding cooked breakfast. Zhuoxiaoduo ate happily with a round belly. He lay on the sofa with a satisfied look on his face. Sure enough, no matter who cooked, it would not be as good as his own mother's cooking. After all, she had raised her son for so many years. Wu Yuding knew her son's taste very well. Naturally, she could make Zhuoxiaoduo beam with joy and delight. Li Chenglong had already gone to school. When Zhuoxiaoduo was not around, it was the best time for Li Chenglong, whose cultivation had greatly improved, to dominate the class. Li Chenglong's grasp of timing was certainly better than the others. When Zhuoxiaoduo was not around, it was a heaven-sent opportunity. How could he miss it? When Zhuoxiaoduo was having breakfast, he had already beaten up all the students in the class. At this moment, he was beating up Xiang Bing fiercely. The whole class was cheering loudly at the side. Only Xiang Chong was speechless. I believe that no one can compete with him, or even dare to compete with him. However, regarding the matter of dealing with the Prince of Zhongyun yesterday, under Wen Xingtian's organization and the approval of the school's leaders, a student conference was held in the morning. Li Chenglong went on stage as the student representative and talked about his views on this matter. Originally, there were representatives from all 4 grades who wanted to go on stage to talk, but after Li Chenglong finished speaking, the others refused to go on stage no matter what. He's already said everything. He's even analyzed everything down to his underwear. What's the point of us going up there? Go on stage and talk about what he had just said? Wouldn't that be embarrassing? Wouldn't that be too shabby? Whoever wants to be a copycat can do it. In any case, I'm not going to do it. The teachers of the various grades did not find the reaction of the student representatives disagreeable. On the contrary, they felt the same way. This was probably the tragedy of having a good person in the first place. In particular, Li Chenglong's last words were so sincere and earnest that all the teachers and students felt the same way and applauded for a long time. However, it was the same speech that made Wen Xingtian and the students of Class 1 laugh so hard that their intestines almost broke. Students, regarding this thing called beauty, we have to emphasize a few words. Everyone's expression was strange. Beauty, this thing called beauty? In the heart of the iron and steel hierarchy, beauty is actually just this thing. That's right. Everyone loves beauty. However, if you don't care about anything else for the sake of beauty and wholeheartedly sink into it, throwing away your country, family, friends, justice, and integrity, what is that? You're an idiot. Let's talk about beauty. Beauty, how many beauties are there on this continent? Am I right? At most, there will be another batch of beauties every few years. You love beauty? Then can you love all of them? There will be fresh and tender little beauties appearing every day. What number one beauty in school bell? It's all just skin and bones, my fellow students. We have to prioritize martial arts. Let's not talk about other things. Yesterday's Zhou Xiaoduo defeated Bing Xiaobing. Are there many beauties who like him? There are many, right? However, Zhou has never considered it. I have been with him for the longest time. I can bet that he is not a eunuch. However, his heart is on martial arts. Boss Zhou doesn't care about beauty at all. In our high school, how many beauties are there in our generation? How many of us are still in elementary school? How many of us are still in kindergarten? How many of us are just born? As for those who are not born, there are even more cough. As for me, although I, Li Chenglong, am not considered a top genius, I am still barely passable, right? But me, of course, I don't look that good and no beauties have taken a fancy to me. However, even if there is one who likes me, I will not accept her. Why? I want to climb to the peak of martial arts. The relationship between men and women is just a small matter. It is not worth mentioning. I, Li Chenglong, do not care about it. The path of martial arts is endless. Keep moving forward and do not ask about the end. These words I encourage you all. The applause was warm. Xiangbing stood up and left with a dark face. The students of Class 1 and the others had a stomach full of rotten words. They looked at Li Chenglong strangely. This guy had offended Xiangbing to the core. As expected, Li Chenglong went to Xiangbing excitedly to spar with her. However, Xiangbing ignored him. It was as if she did not see him. Why? Looking at Xiangbing, who was walking away, Li Chenglong scratched his head. He was puzzled. I did not offend you. What is going on? Everything was fine in the morning. Yi Zichen sighed. The students and teachers did not even smile. Instead, they were worried. For example, Meng Zhongjun went to find Wen Xingtian. Teacher 1, this is not good. The iron and steel hierarchy has reached a level that is worrying. We can laugh at him before, but now if we still don't understand, we will be sad. Meng Zhongjun was worried. Wen Xingtian felt the same way as Meng Zhongjun. In fact, he was also worried about this. Although I'm a teacher, I really can't do anything about this matter. He had never been in a relationship before. Please think of a way. If this goes on, I am afraid it will cause a lifelong regret, Meng Zhongjun said. Wen Xingtian frowned and said, it is difficult for a teacher to intervene in this kind of thing. Let's wait for Zhou Xiaoduo to come and discuss with Zhou Xiaoduo and let him handle this. Meng Zhongjun was speechless. That guy can probably instigate the two of them to fight each other. You are still counting on him to do this? When it comes to important matters, Zhou Xiaoduo won't mess around, right? Wen Xingtian was certain at first. Then, he inexplicably took a turn and became a question mark. It is hard to say. There is a 99% chance that Zhou Xiaoduo will instigate the two of them to continue fighting. There is a 1% chance that he will matchmake them. How despicable. Chapter 704. When Xingtian frowned. Forget it. I'll contact Zhou Xiaoduo after school tonight. Okay. Meng Zhongjun went back. After he went back, he asked Zhen Piapiao and Yu Yan who were playing with their little tigers. The two girls' little tigers had now grown to the size of adult dogs. Although they were still cute, the aura of the king of beasts was gradually showing. An ordinary martial master would probably be pushed to the ground by these two little tigers. Take some time to talk to Xiangbing. How can you keep dragging it out like this? You're both girls, so it's easy to talk to you. The two girls expressed that they were really in a difficult position. Did they not talk to her? They had talked to her more than once or twice. However, Xiangbing was also worried. How could a girl take the initiative in this kind of thing? She could only hope that Li Chenglong would suddenly be enlightened. However, why was it so difficult for this Iron Sect leader to be enlightened? Tian's brain felt as if it had been kicked by a donkey. When it saw Xiangbing, it was like a bull seeing a red cloth. Other than beating her up, there was nothing else. What the hell was she going to do? While the school was filled with melancholy, Zhuo was overjoyed at home. He had originally proposed to accompany his parents to walk around Fenghai City, but Zhuo Chonglu and Wu Yuding directly rejected him. To them, walking around Fenghai City? What was there to walk around in Fenghai City? They were not interested in it at all. Damn it! Wu Yuding instructed. Show me and your dad what you've gained during this period of time. Here. Duo scratched his head and said, it seems. I can't let go. Can't let go? So many? Wu Yuding was stunned. Yes. Then you'll take them one by one? Wu Yuding asked. It's too troublesome. Duo took out the Annihilation Tower and placed it on the table. He grinned as if he was presenting a treasure. Dad, Mom, let's go in and take a look. Yes, I can't do it yet. I have to wait for a while. Wait for a while, I have to go in and take care of it. Following that, he rushed in and quickly absorbed all the heat that the heart of the ardent sun was emitting during this period of time. He went one step further and made the temperature of the space pleasant. Only then did he jump out. This was a must. In Zhuo's heart, even if his parents used to be big bosses, they were very weak now. Wouldn't it be terrible if they got scalded when they went in? Zhuo Chonglu raised his eyebrows. This brat actually had the Tower of Annihilation. There were only a few bottles of it left in the world. It seemed like the Hidden Dragon Academy's headmaster, Yi Chongqing, had given him the bottle he had. However, this thing could only be considered a large space ring and had no other use. But in terms of space rings, the Flood Witch's life ring was much better than this Tower of Annihilation. However, the moment they followed Duo into the Tower of Annihilation, Zhuo Chonglu and his wife were shocked. The pair of mother and son were very experienced. As soon as they entered the interior of the Tower of Annihilation, they keenly felt that something was wrong. How could there be breath of life in here? How could there be breath of life in the Tower of Annihilation? They had never heard that there was a mountain in the Tower of Annihilation. And such a huge mountain range? Well, what was with the lush greenery on the mountain range? On the ground in the distance, patches of soft and tender grass could be seen everywhere. As far as the eye could see, it was a vast and boundless grassland. When the wind blew, the lush and verdant grass swayed back and forth. Zhuo Chonglu and Wu Yuding looked at each other and saw the confusion in each other's eyes. There were only a few bottles of the Tower of Annihilation, that was for sure. And the one in Zhuo's hand must be the one in Yi Chongqing's hand, which was one of the most ordinary bottles. There were only 3 bottles of the Tower of Annihilation that had the function of time. One of the bottles was used for cultivation, which had the effect of 2 days in the outside world. It was given to Yu Dongtian. The other bottle had the effect of 3 days in the outside world. It was given to his disciple's wife by Yun Duo. The last bottle was also able to last for 2 days in the outside world. It was in the hands of the royal family. The others did not have the ability to change the flow of time. They were just like the space ring, which could at most temporarily carry living things. But what was with the bottle in Zhuo's hand? As far as Zhuo Chonglu and Wu Yuding knew, his bottle, even if all the other bottles were added together, would not be as big as Zhuo's bottle, and there would not be mountains or plants in it. It was just a simple difference in the flow of time. Zhuo's bottle could be said to be the one and only unique treasure in the world. Dad, Mom, what do you think of this small tower of mine? Zhuo's face showed that he was presenting a treasure. Now living in this small tower of mine, 1 month in it is only 1 day in the outside world. 1 day is equivalent to 1 month's time? How did you do it? Zhuo Chonglu's eyes were shining. At this moment he was really shocked. About this I'm not very sure. Xiaoduo was really confused about this question. When Zhuochanglu and his wife came in, Xiaolong hid. He repeatedly told Xiaoduo not to tell anyone about him. Even if Xiaoduo wanted to say something, Xiaolong was in existence that no one else could see. If Xiaolong did not want to come out, he had no way to prove his statement. When Yi Chongqing gave it to you, it was already like this? Zhuochanglu asked. No. Dad, how did you know that Principal Yi gave it to me? Xiaoduo asked in surprise. Zhuochanglu coughed. Have you forgotten? Your mom and I are both experts. Oh, right. I'm confused. Xiaoduo lightly slapped his own mouth. It was as if he was caressing it. He laughed foolishly. At this point he also understood that if he did not have Xiaolong's help, he might still be able to absorb the Astral Soul's jade powder. However, the effect would not be as amazing as it was now. Dad, I can only say that the process is very coincidental, and there is a 99% chance that it cannot be replicated. Xiaoduo thought about it and said tactfully, it is very coincidental. I will report to you after I figure out the reason. Forget it. Zhuochanglu was very open-minded. There was only one bottle of this thing, and it was in his son's hands. What was there to be worried about? No one else had it? That's great. If everyone had it, how could the Zhuo family show off their extraordinary martial prowess? This is the heart of the sun? You use this to cultivate your flaming sun scripture? Wu Yuding asked in surprise. Her son even had this? Mom, the origin of this is even more coincidental. The last time it fell from the sky, it coincidentally landed on my leg. Xiaoduo was exultant. Wu Yuding grinned. Fell from the sky and landed on your leg? Why didn't it land on someone else's leg? Seeing that this kid was as happy as a husky, the couple tacitly did not expose him. However, Wu Yuding and her husband looked at each other and smiled at the same time. Having a godfather was indeed awesome. He even gave this to them. These two balls of yellow light. Zhuochanglu leaned over to take a look. He was shocked again. These are two saber-winged tigers that are being modified by the bloodline inheritance? You have a lot of rare things. They come out one after another. There is no end to them. Xiaoduo was really shocked. His father's eyesight was really good. Yes, Dad. You have a good eye. This is it. Xiaoduo gave him a thumbs up. Zhuochanglu straightened his back and frowned. It looks like they're coming out soon. How are you going to deal with these two tigers? Xiaoduo scratched his head and said, well, I haven't thought about it yet. Wu Yuding stopped to take a look and said, the origin of these two little tigers is a demon. From what I can see, these two adult saber-winged tigers were modified by chance. Coupled with the inheritance of the heavenly tiger, their demon nature is hard to tame, and their wild nature is also hard to tame. It won't be easy to tame them. Mom, give me an idea. What should we do? Xiaoduo was very straightforward. It's a pity to kill them. I don't think we can get much meat. Two of them won't even be enough to eat a meal. I can't figure it out. Mom and Dad are here. Eat meat. I can't believe you can think of that. Wu Yuding rolled her eyes and said, how about this? We'll stay here for a while. The transformation of these two tigers should be completed. At that time, I'll think of a way to make them recognize you as their master. Then your father and I will help you train them for a few days. When we leave, we'll release them into the forest and let them grow up. This kind of demonic tiger bloodline, if you keep it by your side, it will easily lose its wild nature. Apart from being a pity, it will also cause a sharp decrease in combat power. Only when they fight on their own in the wild can they be of use. But once they recognize you as their master, there will be a certain degree of connection between them. If you can use them in the future, you can use them. If you can't, you can just abandon them. Wu Yuding said very lightly. Zhuochanglu frowned and said, it's hard to predict the cycle of cause and effect. The return of the demon continent is a foregone conclusion. Let's see if these two tigers can be useful. But I think it'll be very difficult. If they can grow into the heavenly tiger soul essence that can make the heavenly tiger moonlight ointment, Zhuochanglu muttered. I buried that thing under that mountain. Xiaoduo pointed to the mountain in the space-destroying tower and said, Dad, it's there. It's there. Zhuochanglu rolled his eyes. Finally, He couldn't help patting Zhuo on the shoulder and said with gratification in his eyes, "You're really my son?" Wu Yuding laughed. Zhuo didn't understand. "I brought that thing back in the hope that it can grow again. What does it have to do with whether I'm your son or not? By the way, I've also buried those that can grow dragon soul ginseng and snake king fruit." Zhuo suddenly remembered, "Dad, Mom, I have 2 mature dragon soul ginseng here. Why don't you each eat one? Maybe it can restore your cultivation. Even a part of it will be good." Zhuo shook his head. "That thing is good. But it's useless to me and your mother. Our cultivation can't be restored with external things." Useless? Zhuo couldn't help but wonder. It seemed that his parents' problems were more serious. Why didn't they use such good things? Although the dragon soul ginseng is good, it's only useful for those below the mysterious realm. Wu Yuding rubbed Zhuo's hair and messed it up. Okay. Zhuo suddenly became anxious. It seemed that he had to eat it as soon as possible. If he broke through the mysterious realm, wouldn't it be useless? At that time it would only benefit others. What was the difference between that and buying something delicious but not eating it and letting it expire? "This pagoda of yours," Wu Yuding thought for a while and said, "When the 2 little tigers come out, I'll find someone to recognize this pagoda as its owner." Zhuo's eyes lit up and said, "That's a good idea." As for who this pagoda originally belonged to, whether it was given to Zhuo or lent to him, the 2 of them didn't care. Was this kind of question important? Since it's in my son's hands, it's his. Snatch it? Let's see if you dare. Chapter 705. There are still a lot of precious treasures. I buried all of them in this mountain. Zhuo pointed at the mountain in front of him with a smug look on his face. You saw them? You even marked them all? Zhuo was impressed by his son's way of thinking. The whole mountain was filled with flags. There were many small flags with words written on them. Those were the names of medicinal herbs, fluttering in the wind. Colorful Ganoderma lucidum, crystal snow ginseng, soul-tempering vermilion fruit, crystal vine, young returning grass, nightmare flower. At a rough glance, there were more than 100 types of medicinal herbs. The whole mountain was filled with flags. It was a spectacular sight. It was like an old general with flags all over his body leading an army full of flags to set up an ambush here. Zhuo put his hands behind his back and looked at his masterpiece with a calm and pretentious face. You must be shocked. Dad, Mom, your son is awesome. Now, I'm qualified to be the head of the family. Zhuo's collection in this mountain was only a small half of what he had collected. Most of it was taken from the spatial rings he had seized. It had to be said that with so many spatial rings, there was practically everything he could think of. There were only things that one could not imagine. There was nothing that was not inside. Zhuo was very proud. Wu Yuding rubbed her eyebrows. She was a little angry. It seemed that the little dog had taken a lot of risks during this period. Many of these things were good stuff that could only be found by chance. It was not easy to get them. This kid was a little arrogant. You have to remember these things clearly. Zhuo warned. Some things are not very important. You don't have to be too stingy with them. Sometimes you will forget about them. Sometimes they will delay things. This was Zhuo's experience. There were often too many things that were seized. Often they would just pile them into the space rings and not care about them. After a while, when he remembered them, he would not know what they were like. They might have rotted or broken in the past. There were people who couldn't find them. This kind of thing happened too often. I understand. Zhuo chuckled and said, It's just that I'm still too weak now. If I take out too many good things, people will only covet them. When I'm stronger, I'll take them out and exchange them for money. Right now in Fenghai City, there is a ready-made family that can help me deal with this, but I don't plan to let them do it yet. I still want to observe them. Zhuo asked in detail and nodded. You're right to be cautious. Even if you're sure that she's reliable, you can't let your guard down before you experience a conflict of interest. Money can move people's hearts. It's never just a saying. Yes, Zhuo had already figured out how to operate it. Feng Yinhua had been idle for such a long time. It was time to give him some work. He wanted to find a suitable opportunity for him to partner with Gao Chaoer's family. Anything else? Wu Yuding couldn't bear to see Zhou Xiaoduo showing off. She said, "How much is this? And the quality is just average." "How much is this? The quality is just average." Zhou Xiaoduo, who was waiting for his mother's praise, was shocked by her mother's tone. He thought that this would be enough to surprise his parents. But now, listening to his mother's tone, it didn't seem to be a big deal. "Speaking of which, how high are your standards?" Zhou Chonglu patted his wife's shoulder and said softly, "It's not easy for your son to get these with his own ability." Wu Yuding nodded. This made sense. Zhou Chonglu immediately said, "Although it's quite rubbish, it can't hold up against so many." "Rubbish?" Zhou Xiaoduo was not convinced. "Why is it not easy for me to get these? Your son is awesome. I still have a lot of good things that I haven't taken out yet. Take a look and don't blink." As he said that, he put down the space ring. But it was spitting out like a flash flood. In an instant, a mountain was piled up on the ground. "This is the astral soul stone I got from my father. It's for you to use when you go back to open the shop." Zhou Xiaoduo was about to pour it out again. Stop. The astral soul stone shop has already been transferred." Wu Yuding said disdainfully, "Your father won't be selling astral soul stones in the future. You're already so old. You still have to work hard for us. You can only keep these for yourself." Zhou Xiaoduo was stunned. "It's been transferred? He's not doing it anymore. Of course it has to be transferred. What's the point of keeping it?" Wu Yuding said matter-of-factly, "Now that you and Yan Yan are sending money home every day, we don't need to open a shop to earn money. We can't earn much anyway. What's the point of keeping it?" Zhou Xiaoduo thought about it and agreed. "It's good that it's been transferred. If you ask me, it should have been transferred long ago. The two of you are right to think this way. You should rest and enjoy life. No matter what, your son is a man who can be the head of the family now." Zhou Chonglu squinted. "What? You want to fight for power?" Zhou Xiaoduo hurriedly smiled apologetically. "Dad, please don't misunderstand. What I mean is that Nian Nian and I are the head of the family. I'm not talking about our family." He. Wu Yuding squinted. "Your family. It's hard to say what your position in the family is. In any case, your mother doesn't think highly of you." Zhou Xiaoduo stiffened his neck and said, "In any case, on the household register, the head of the household is definitely me. It has to be me. It's definitely me. How can there be a mistake?" Ha. Wu Yuding laughed so hard that her stomach hurt. "What a cute little puppy. You can only find some sense of superiority in this area." Zhou Xiaoduo's face turned red from his mother's laughter. He gritted his teeth and said, "Mom, just watch. Nian Nian can't do anything in our house. That's impossible. When the time comes, I'll beat her up one by one." After thinking about it, he hurriedly followed up and said, "If I can't beat her, you can help me beat her up." Wu Yuding laughed so hard that her intestines almost broke. Afraid that her son would laugh at her, she hurriedly went over to check the pile of supplies. The first thing that came into view was a large pile of pearls. There were more than 1,000 grams of snake pearls and centipede pearls. "Keep the biggest ones. Get rid of the rest. Give them to your classmates or the families that may rely on you in the future. These pearls can be passed down as heirlooms in small and medium-sized families." Wu Yuding said, "Even if it's a big family, the young ones will still need these things when they're young. Don't think that it's easy to get them just because you have a lot of them. These things are also rare. So each of these pearls is a huge favor. It's also a gift for your future connections and power circle." Understood. After that, Wu Yuding sorted out all of Zhou Xiaoduo's loot by category. She threw the medicinal herbs and elixirs into a pile. Wu Yuding's processing speed was too fast for the eye to take in. She was so fast that Zhou Xiaoduo was a little dazzled. Then, except for those that Zhou Xiaoduo could use now, there was only one sentence for everything else. "Hurry up and get rid of them, including those low-grade astral souls jade and those astral soul stones. They would only take up space if he kept them." After sorting out, especially the large number of astral soul stones and astral souls jade, Zhou Xiaoduo realized that he could only keep less than 1/10 of the items. Basically, it was only 2 or 3% of the items. With your current cultivation level, you won't be able to use these things. Even if they look useful, they don't have any practical effect. In the long run, they will only become trash and be thrown away. Instead of throwing them away, it's better to sell them now and let them circulate in the market. Then, you can exchange them for things that you need. Even if you change them into star yuan coins and let them lie in your account, they will still be of use. Except for some real heavenly treasures which are not afraid of the erosion of time and can be used continuously, you can get rid of everything else. Don't say that you can't bear to part with them, including those big beads that I suggested you keep. After a while, when you see if they are useless, you will still have to throw them away. Horizons are very important. Every advancement in martial arts is accompanied by a widening of one's horizons. For example, ordinary people need cold medicine. Do you need it now? For example, the low-grade astral soul's jade that ordinary martial artists need. Do you still need it now? Wu Yuding educated her son. You can be stingy and greedy, but don't be stingy to the extent that you will turn the wealth in your hands into trash. Zhou Xiaoduo asked humbly, then what is worth keeping forever? Something that can hold its value forever? Those dragon soul ginsengs that I'm burying now, are they worth it? Wu Yuding said disdainfully, after reaching a certain level they will still be trash. With your current cultivation speed, you can consider throwing them away in less than 2 years. Fuck. Zhou Xiaoduo was a little shocked. His mother's horizons were so high. Speaking of things that can be kept, things that can hold its value forever. For example, the sword in your hand, the hammer. The ice spirit that you just won. Ice spirit? Zhou Xiaoduo was puzzled. Why did they all call it ice spirit? Didn't Bing Xiaobing always call it ice spirit? Yes, ice spirit. These can all be kept. Wu Yuding thought for a while and said, as for the rest, including this heart of the sun, when your cultivation is high enough you can absorb it all and turn it into powder. After that, it will be hard to say whether you want to keep it or not. And the space soil? In short, you have to firmly remember that in this world, there are the 9 great wondrous stones, 9 great metals, 9 great treasured medicines, and so on. These are the things that can be preserved for a long time until you and I. Yes, until you reach the level of the highest combat power in this world. If you surpass that, even these are still useless. As for things that can hold its value forever, you have to talk about the legendary level, the true starry sky treasures. Wu Yuding's voice was a little fascinated. Chapter 706. For example, there is a legendary sword. When this sword is used, it can cut apart the starry sky and the Milky Way. For example, there is a blade in the legends. Once this blade is used, the universe will be reborn. For example, there is a treasure that can reopen the universe or something. Wu Yuding sighed. There are many good things in legends. You won't know about them until you reach a certain level. Of course, you don't have the right to know about them. Let's take human experience as an example. When you're flying in the sky, there's someone running on the ground. You'll be the champion in a 100-meter race in just a few seconds. When you reach a certain realm, you'll be able to run from here to the main hall of the Wizard Alliance in just a few seconds. It's not about the gap, but about the understanding and knowledge of different realms experience. Zhou Xiaoduo's eyebrows twitched as he listened. He even strongly suspected that his mother was just bragging. He had never heard of such a person. Even legends and myths were not as awesome as this. Speaking of Cao Cao would appear. That was just a far-fetched understanding. Don't doubt it. Someone has really done it before. Zhuo Chonglu sighed softly and said, that person is so powerful. As long as he is still on this continent, he can appear anywhere on this continent with just a thought. He can really be wherever he wants to be. For example, he is now at the southernmost part of the UMNO Alliance. Then, he can stand on the highest peak in the northernmost part of the Astral Soul's continent in the blink of an eye. Don't look at me in disbelief. It's this person who was exiled to the other 8 continents. Although, this is just a legend. Your mother was just casually talking about it. With your current realm, it doesn't matter if you take it seriously or not. Just listen to it. This is something beyond your understanding. When your cultivation reaches a certain level, you will naturally understand. Zhou Xiaoduo scratched his head. Well, compared to what you said, I've really collected a pile of trash. I've become the king of trash. Also, those space rings you have, give them away when you need to, sell them when you need to. There's no point in hoarding them. Wu Yuding was exasperated at her son's miserly behavior. When you're stronger, you'll be able to get as many of these things as you want. If you can't find them yourself, can't you just snatch them from the battlefield? The bigger the fist, the more powerful the argument. The higher the cultivation, the more obvious it will be. Rob? Swichonglu coughed repeatedly at the side. Don't lead the child astray. It's too damaging. Wu Yuding gave him a sidelong glance. Do you still need me to teach you this? What did he learn from you? Just your genes alone have already caused your son to go astray. Not to mention teaching by word and example. Swishaoduo was getting more and more frustrated. He thought that he was already the richest man in the world, but now it seemed that in his parents' eyes, he was just a rag picker. At most, he was just a rag picker with a little bit of wealth. However, what he didn't know was that his parents were already shocked to the core when they saw the mountain-like materials. These things were naturally nothing to the husband and wife, but if it was related to Zhuoxiaoduo's current cultivation, it was a very, very terrifying reality. There was really a lot of good stuff here. When did an origin core cultivator get so many good things? According to what the couple knew since ancient times, there had never been an origin core realm cultivator who was able to live as well as their son. His son was able to move resources out mountain by mountain. He was truly worthy of the reputation of having 2 sleeves of gold. Wu Yuding even felt a sense of inferiority. They were happy and comfortable. This atmosphere had a great impact on Zhuoxiaoduo. It made him yearn for marriage. As long as he got married, he could be so happy forever. Therefore, this guy had long been impatient to get married. He yearned for it and was drooling over it. Fire and water don't mix. Wu Yuding looked displeased for the first time, and her expression was very ugly as she spoke. This Lai Hu couple simply did not have good intentions when they sent this wine. Good stuff, it was good stuff, but Zhuoxiaoduo couldn't use it right now. Speaking of which, none of the things that these 3 fellows gave, including the things that Bing Ming lost, could strengthen Zhuoxiaoduo. It was either a foreign object or something Zhuoxiaoduo couldn't use. These 3 great shamans were knowledgeable and knew it clearly. They could give gifts, but they wouldn't help you train your son. Therefore, they didn't care if Bing Ming lost the ice soul. Anyway, your son couldn't use it. Giving it to others. It was better to give it to your son than to give it to others. With your son's talent, he would definitely be a strong opponent when he grows up. With your guidance, his future would be terrifying. But the others were far worse. For others, it would be a great achievement if they could reach the level of the 4 great marshals. This led to the reality that Zhuoxiaoduo had the sun attribute. But the great shamans gave him the ice soul. Was the ice soul good stuff? It was definitely good stuff. Whoever dared to say it wasn't good stuff, I'll knock his teeth out. But your son couldn't use it. Wasn't it infuriating? Ha 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 ha. Therefore, the great shamans gave the ice soul with a clear conscience. As for the resources they gave to Li Chenglong, firstly, how old was that kid? Secondly, this little fellow's threat was much smaller than Zhuoxiaoduo's. Helping him to nurture and strengthen his foundation was not a big deal. Even if they split the resources, it wouldn't be a big deal. Anyway, it wasn't a lot of high-quality resources. Besides, young people were naive and stupid. They all cared about fairness. So, if they didn't split the resources, would there be a gap? If Li Chenglong's share was split, wouldn't it be inappropriate for them to split mine and not yours? Zhuoxiaoduo's space, earth, water and fire don't mix, mysterious ice. Take it out and split it. Not split it. Why wouldn't you split it? This was human nature. Not to mention an inexperienced young man. The twists and turns were all calculated by these old people. Don't think that they took it out casually. Whoever believed them was a fool. Every step was an open scheme. They weren't afraid that you wouldn't fall into their trap. But the 3 great shamans still miscalculated. Because they never dreamed that Zhuoxiaodu and his wife didn't only have one son, but also a daughter whose talent wasn't inferior to their son's. And the direction of their daughter's cultivation was ice attribute. Also, Li Chenglong and Zhuoxiaoduo's relationship and their respective positions had already been set. It couldn't be shaken by mere external things. In the future, he would be the heavenly king and I would be the military advisor. You want to break this iron-like position with just a few pieces of astral soul's jade? You're thinking too much. In Li Chenglong's heart, where were they now? Inner core realm. Even if they wanted to fall out, it should be at the level of left and right heavenly king, right? At that level they couldn't fall out. Besides, Zhuo was so much stronger than me. If I fell out with him, what else could I do but get beaten up? If I didn't fall out with him, I would be beaten up every day. If I fell out with him, I wouldn't be able to live. Let's talk about water and fire don't mix. Riley was really big. And it was definitely a good thing. But it was more or less improper. At that time, things started after the Raging Fire Shaman married the Ice Abyss Shaman's sister. The two of them didn't get along well. They fought every day. They started fighting when they were young, day after day, year after year. They fought 5 times in 3 days. When the two of them fought, the unlucky ones were actually Dan Kong and the Flood. They couldn't help it. These 3 families lived too close to each other. The two of them often fought and fought until they came to the Flood's place. You pull my hair, I pull your ear. This one has a swollen nose, that one has a bloody face. Boss, please be the judge. What's wrong with this son of a bitch? Every time this happened, the Flood Witch would have a big headache. How can others judge when you two fight? Even an upright official can't solve a family dispute. Don't tell me that I'm a great shaman, not an upright official. Chapter 707. But the Lai Hua couple had been fighting for so many years that the Flood Witch, Senior Witch Dan Kong, and Senior Witch Bing Ming couldn't stand it anymore. Especially Senior Witch Bing Ming. He was about to collapse. Sister and brother-in-law fought every day. As a brother-in-law, he shouldn't be too sad to be caught in the middle. He couldn't help sister beat brother-in-law every time, could he? Although he had done so before, the problem was that there was a saying that made sense. When husband and wife fight, they fight at the head of the bed and make up at the end. Today, he helped his sister and brother to beat up his brother-in-law. As a result, they didn't fight the next day and made up. So they turned around and beat him together. And often at this time, in order to mend the relationship between husband and wife, the sister beat him especially hard. You dare to beat my husband? You've got guts. We are fighting. As an outsider, you don't mediate, but help one side to beat the other side. What are you doing if you are not stirring up trouble? If I don't beat you, who will I beat? After the violent beating, the husband and wife were able to vent their anger and return to harmony. The husband and wife both returned home. The poor Senior Witch Bing Ming was bruised all over. He had a pig's head and panda eyes. His eyes were full of tears. 2 days later, his elder sister came crying to his door again. Raging Flame, that son of a bitch, hit me. Little brother, you have to help me vent my anger. You have to support elder sister. You are elder sister's only relative in this world. After a few times, Senior Witch Bing Ming broke down. Senior Witch Bing Ming, who couldn't stand it, moved away at that time. But even if he moved away, he couldn't stop. When the couple fought, sister still came crying again. You are my little brother. How can you not care about me? Of course, the most unlucky one was not Senior Witch Dan Kong and Senior Witch Bing Ming. Because he couldn't beat anyone. He couldn't beat Lai Hua. He couldn't beat Senior Witch Bing Ming. He couldn't even beat Lai Hua's wife. He was just a punching bag. And he moved away and was caught back. Later, the 3 great witches got together to discuss. They couldn't go on like this. To put it bluntly, that was the most brainstorming thing the 3 great witches had done in their lives. There was no other. In order to adjust the relationship between the two of them, he invented this wine that was incompatible between fire and water. Actually, there was nothing wrong with drinking this wine. It was just that the woman would feel hotter and hotter while the man would feel colder and colder. Then they would look at each other with delicate features. Then, they could only gather together and have fun. When the happiness was over, the hot and cold energy would turn into 2 different types of energy and be absorbed. Their strength would improve and the relationship between husband and wife would become very sweet. Most importantly, this wine was effective for a long time, and there was no problem with one's realm. For this wine, the Flood Great Witch contributed a 9th heaven cold spring eye. The Ice Deep Witch contributed a 9th heaven cold soul. The Dan Kong Great Witch also contributed a space soul, which was a spirit seed that could extract the purest energy from the universe. And the Raging Fire Great Witch also contributed a sky fire mouth. The 4 senior magi worked together to create a wine that was as incompatible as fire and water. In the end, the result was that the Lai Hua couple rarely fought. Well, they fought in their beds every day and rarely went out to fight. Everyone felt much more comfortable. Their hard work had not been in vain. Finally, they didn't have to persuade them to fight every day. However, They didn't know when this wine became popular. There's no limit to the number of times you can drink it, but there's still a time limit. Unlike other good wines, the longer you keep it, the more fragrant it becomes. This wine has a shelf life. If you don't drink it for 3 years, its effects will completely dissipate. With your son's current cultivation, no matter how amazing he is, it's impossible for him to reach the Sky Soar realm within 3 years. He's only at the origin core realm now. Are you kidding me? Moreover, we don't believe that an old drunkard like Zhuozhonglu wouldn't drink these fine wines after 3 years without doing anything. But if you drink it, we'll have a reason to make fun of you. This old man even drank the adult product that we gave to his son. What's the point of drinking it? Who doesn't know? Ha ha ha, even on the battlefield. We'll laugh until your face turns red. After drinking this wine, your body will have a fragrance that won't go away for a long time. As long as you drink it, we'll know. And so that's all we can do with this wine. Unless you, Zhuozhonglu, give these 6 jars of wine to people who just happen to need it, like the king of Zhuolu and his wife. However, the couple's cultivation has always been about the same as ours. They've basically reached the peak. Unless they get a great opportunity, they'll stop here. Let's slowly grind together. What can a few more jars of wine help? Who's afraid of who? Therefore, Wu Yuding was really angry at the fact that she hadn't dealt with this issue of water and fire being incompatible. Too mischievous. Lai Hua, this bastard, he's not human at all. This wine. Let's keep it for now. Zhuozhonglu said. Let's keep it for 2.5 years first. If within 2.5 years, Nianyan and Duo can improve greatly and get married, it's fine. Wu Yuding sighed and said, after 2.5 years, if it still doesn't work, let's give this wine to Yunduo and Hutu. Cultivation is no match for opportunity. The opportunity belongs to whoever it belongs to. Zhuozhonglu said. The 2 of us can drink it. Wu Yuding, scram. Zhuozhonglu was puzzled and couldn't help but ask. Therefore, Zhuozhonglu skipped the origin of these wines and only explained their effects. This explanation immediately made Zhuozhonglu feel deep veneration. The way he looked at the 6 jars of wine was a little strange. I like this wine. What kind of high-end toy was this? It can only be drunk by powerful people above the sky realm? And it's a special wine for dual cultivation? This is a good thing that Lai Hua prepared for me. How does he know I'm thin-skinned? If Nianyan Cat gets married, she's not willing. Then I'll hold a candlelight banquet, Then we'll each drink a cup, and then. As he thought about it, Zhuozhonglu couldn't help but be fascinated. This wine can be used as a strategic resource for my family. As for the sky realm in 3 years. How could this be a problem for my wise and mighty Lord Dogda? Is it difficult? Don't you know that I went from martial disciple to core in 1 year? Martial disciple, martial master, Xiantian embryonic breathing, core. Is it difficult? Moreover, I suppressed my advancement the whole time. Now, from core to nascent soul, cloud transformation, imperial god, nascent soul, sky realm, it's just a few levels. In order to dual cultivate with Nianyan Cat, I have to work hard. Work hard to cultivate. Zhuozhonglu was instantly filled with motivation. His goal was the sky realm. A new goal for a salted fish formed. Zhuozhonglu asked expectantly, Dad, this wine, is it referring to the sky realm that has been suppressed many times, or is it the normal sky realm? Cultivators who can advance to the sky realm are no ordinary cultivators. If there's no suppression in the early stages, reaching the nascent soul realm is already the limit. Do you think that cultivation is a joke and that you can rely on luck? Zhuozhonglu said indifferently. Seeing the light in this kid's eyes, how could he not know what this kid was thinking? What was he thinking? However, even Zhuozhonglu and Wu Yuding were not optimistic about Zhuozhonglu's chances of reaching the sky realm in 3 years. Well, it should be said that they were not optimistic at all. Of all the cultivators who could reach that realm, which one of them hadn't gone through hundreds or thousands of years of arduous cultivation? 3 years. 3 years to reach the sky realm and 2 people to reach the sky realm at the same time? No matter how amazing a genius was, it was impossible. Under the suppression of the thorny path 6 times, it will be difficult for one to reach the sky realm in one's lifetime. That's the most basic limitation of talent. Therefore, those who can reach the sky realm are all geniuses. True geniuses, geniuses above geniuses. Oh, Duo was unhappy. He had thought that with his strong foundation, he could reach the sky realm in advance. Lu could not help but laugh. But with your current accumulation, if you can maintain it, you can drink this wine when you reach the nascent soul realm. Ahem. Wu Yuding coughed. Lu immediately corrected himself. But it's better to drink it when you reach the sky realm. Just because you can drink it doesn't mean that there won't be any hidden dangers. I understand. I'll keep it well. Duo looked at the 6 jars of wine and felt that his mouth was watering. He was itching to give it a try. With a flip of his wrist, he put it away. I'll keep it well, Wu Yuding rolled her eyes. This kid had only been so serious a few times. Now that he was acting like a miser in front of his parents, he probably wouldn't take out the 6 jars of wine even if he waited until they expired. Chapter 708. Mom, according to what you're saying, these things that I have now. Duo was at a loss. Apart from the fact that most of them are useful to Nian Niao, there aren't many that are useful to me? There were so many good things. Why did his mom say that they were all useless? Duo was at a loss. The only good wine he had was actually waiting until he reached the Sky Soar realm. This was simply making things difficult for him. Wu Yuding said, since they're good things, how could they be useless? However, many of them are useful for your current stage. For example, pills that can increase vitality, natural treasures, and so on. These are all fine, but you need to use them as soon as possible. Otherwise, when you break through to the cloud transformation realm, these things won't be of much use anymore. If you force yourself to use them, it will instead become a hidden danger. The so-called hidden danger is probably due to the fact that too many natural treasures will form in your body. When you break through to the Sky Soar realm, you need to use your true yuan to burn them. This is also the fundamental reason why so many people find it so difficult to break through to the Sky Soar realm. After all, using natural treasures to increase one's cultivation is fast, and there's also a sense of pleasure in reaping without sowing. Many people will never tire of it. After all, if they can easily become stronger, who would be willing to give up what's nearby and work hard on their own cultivation? However, in this world, if you want to become stronger, how can there be so many advantages for you to take? The saying more haste, less speed is the best way to describe it. Therefore, in the early stage, those who use this method to increase their strength, no matter how amazing their aptitude is, or how good their luck is, will inevitably stumble when it comes to natural treasures. However, the cultivation of a martial artist is arduous and sluggish. Obtaining some natural treasures is in itself a kind of fate. It can be said to be a necessary supplement and a great help. As long as you restrain yourself from eating too much in the early stage and don't build up too much resistance in your body, then there's no harm. After all, as one's cultivation increases, the chances of encountering top-notch natural treasures in the future will be greater. If you can't use them to their fullest potential because of a moment of impatience, the gains won't make up for the losses, and you'll regret it. To give you a direct example, take this pile of astral beast meat and king-grade spirit meat as an example. At this stage, it is undoubtedly a great opportunity. But you've eaten a lot now. So you've improved a lot. But it's still only based on your current realm. You've eaten too much and you've developed a resistance to it. So you won't be able to improve as much as those who haven't eaten the meat of emperor level or higher demon beasts. Wu Yuding said, do you understand now? Duo came to a sudden realization and nodded repeatedly. I understand now. It's like a person taking cold medicine. Once he catches a cold, he'll take medicine. Later on, normal cold medicine won't work anymore. It's the same principle. Because the body has developed a resistance to the medicine, it's 3 parts poison. They're 2 sides of the same coin. Wu Yuding praised, yes, that's right. My son is really smart. Lu looked up at the sky. Was it even worth praising him for being smart? According to your explanation, even a child can understand, let alone our son who is not stupid. So hurry up and deal with it. Quickly throw away the useless ones. Change all the resources you don't need to the high-grade jade of astral souls. It'll be best if you can change them to the high-grade jade of astral souls. Our family will definitely not screw up in this aspect. Where are you now? I'll be there in a while. I'm in the villa. Zua, wait for me for a while. I'll be there in half an hour at most. As their relationship became closer, Gao Chaoer had started to call him Zua like Li Chenglong. Gao Chaoer put down the phone without hesitation. She immediately dialed the number. Prepare 20 Origin Core Realm martial artists, 3 accountants, 2 auction appraisers, and 2 auction managers for me. You must be at the Hidden Dragon Villa complex in 20 minutes, in front of Zua's house. This is the first time our family is working for Zua. I don't want any mistakes. Okay. Then Gao Chaoer returned to her normal state and leisurely wandered around the school. She also told a few of the Gao family's disciples that they didn't need to go home for a few days. Then she specifically found the number 1 genius of the Gao family, Gao Junlong. If you still want your surname to be Gao, be honest. Especially about Zua. If you dare to go out and talk nonsense, you will be crippled of your martial arts and expelled from the family. Gao Junlong's face was bitter. Since yesterday's battle with Zua Xiaoduo on the arena, Gao Junlong, who claimed to be a top genius and ranked in the top 10 of the 4th grade class 3 of the Hidden Dragon High Martial Arts Academy, lost all his arrogance. There was no other reason. With his initial cloud transformation realm cultivation and experience, after comparing himself to Zua Xiaoduo's battle, he found that he was not his opponent at all. In fact, he was an existence that could be completely crushed. If it was a real life and death battle, perhaps he would be finished in one move. He would die in pieces and be riddled with holes. And his opponent was only at the Origin Core realm. After coming to this conclusion, Gao Junlong became completely honest. Gao Chaoer, who had also witnessed the battle, only came to warn him as a precaution. In fact, even if she did not warn him, Gao Junlong would not dare to make any trouble. Not to mention other things, right now he was afraid that he could not even defeat Li Chenglong. 30 in the morning. Gao Chaoer brought some people and punctually appeared at Zua Xiaoduo's villa. When she saw Zua Chonglu and his wife, she respectfully greeted them. Zua Chonglu and Wu Yuding did not expect that Zua Xiaoduo would call such a beautiful and capable girl over with just a phone call. They could not help but be very interested. Wu Yuding looked at Zua Xiaoduo and felt a little sorry for her son. This work probably won't be finished in one morning. But according to my understanding of Nian Mao, she will probably arrive in the afternoon. When she sees Gao Chaoer here. Son, I wish you all the best. Mom can't help you. Mom is just here to watch the show. After exchanging some pleasantries, Gao Chaoer went into work mode. Boss, what's the matter? What task do you have for me? Since she was already in work mode, Gao Chaoer simply omitted the word left. Help me deal with some things. My request is to deal with all the corresponding value into Supreme Grade Astral Souls Jade. If it's difficult, you can use Supreme Grade Astral Souls Jade to trade if you have no other choice. Oh, for the rest of the limited value, deal with them as cash. Zua Xiaoduo ordered casually. Then, they started to work in the villa's courtyard. A few mountains fell from the sky and piled up in the backyard. Gao Chaoer and her people immediately started to work. First, they dealt with the items according to their categories. Then, they appraised them individually. The accountant started to make tables and tabulate the numbers. The appraiser then started to appraise the items. The old auctioneer started to wander around. Those items were suitable for ordinary people, those for martial artists below the nascent soul realm, and those for martial artists above the nascent soul realm. The transaction prices of these items were all different. There were quite a few differences. Gao Chaoer needed to clearly count the quantity here and estimate the approximate value. Then, she would use this approximate value to estimate Zua Xiaoduo's request. Finally, she would take these items away. And all of this would be an extremely huge workload. Gao Chaoer had already ordered the dishes from Firstborn Heaven 1st grade, and asked them to send it over at noon. Lunch would definitely be eaten here. Otherwise, the work wouldn't be done. Zua Xiaoduo was pushed into the room by Gao Chaoer. Go and accompany uncle and auntie to talk. I don't need you here. Okay. Zua Xiaoduo was also a big-hearted person. He went in without saying anything. This girl is not bad. She's very smart and capable. Wu Yuding clicked her tongue. Zua Xiaoduo smiled and said, Do you still remember the 2 sisters that I killed in the Central Plains Longhu List arena? I'm from her family, I'm her cousin. But this family's attitude towards me changed exceptionally quickly. So quickly that even I didn't expect it. They've shown me kindness and sincerity time and time again. And now they've even taken the initiative to pledge allegiance to me. As he spoke, he introduced them carefully. Zhuanglu chuckled and said, "Every time the stormy era starts, the families that take advantage of the situation are either led by geniuses or have good foresight and know how to invest. This Gao family seems to belong to this category." Zhou Xiaoduo asked, "Many people have advised me to accept them cautiously. Dad, what do you think?" Zhou Chonglu said lightly, "Don't worry and do it boldly. As long as your strength is always in a state of rapid improvement, they won't dare to be disloyal. But if one day you reach a bottleneck or fall, then it's time to be wary of these people. Now, there's no need to worry." Chapter 709. I understand now. Zhou Xiaoduo instantly understood. The basic rule of this world was that the bigger the fist, the bigger the argument. As long as your fist was big enough, everything else was insignificant. "Dad, I will definitely remember your teachings and use my iron fist to suppress everything that disagrees with me." In the villa, Zhou Xiaoduo accompanied his parents to talk and drink tea. Then they asked some questions about martial arts. Zhou Xiaoduo wanted to find out more about his parents. After all, when he met Wu Yuding this time, Zhou Xiaoduo faintly felt that something was wrong with his mother's experienced and knowledgeable side, as well as her indifferent expression and tone. "It seems that I have underestimated my parents?" However, the result of this test made him even more confused than before. This time Zhou Chonglu and Wu Yuding were very abnormal. They didn't hide anything. No matter what questions Zhou Xiaoduo asked, they would immediately answer it. They even let Zhou Xiaoduo demonstrate the martial arts, kung fu, and moves that he had learned several times. Then, they would comment on each move, which was very different from their previous low-key attitude. Moreover, no matter what level of martial arts it was, his parents would casually explain it from shallow to deep and from deep to shallow. In Zhou Xiaoduo's opinion, with his parents' level, it would be a waste of their talents if they didn't come to the higher martial arts institute to be a professor or something. Many teachers couldn't explain things that they couldn't understand even if they tried. However, in the eyes of his parents, it was nothing. In a few words, they could explain it to the point that even a child could understand it. This was really too awesome. If such a talent were to become a teacher, wouldn't he have students all over the world? Zhou Xiaoduo was chatting casually inside while Gao Qiao'er was working hard outside. And now, at this time, Zhou Xiaonian was wrapped in frost as she rushed all the way from Shangjing. She was about to reach Fenghai. That bastard actually hooked up with female students. And a few of them. Zhou Xiaonian's anger had not subsided the entire way. "Humph, you lied to me for so many days. Bastard, if you don't give me an explanation, you're dead. Even if your parents are here, they won't be able to save you." Gao Qiao'er worked hard. This time, the items that Zhou Xiaoduo brought out were all top-notch. After all, they were all reserved items that had been scoured through. Basically, there were no ordinary goods. Many of the spiritual herbs and spiritual plants were top-grade goods that were priceless in the outside market. Apart from the demonic beast king's beads, he had also taken out some heavenly treasures. The more Gao Qiao'er thought about it, the more frightened she became. There were too many things and the value was too high. It was so high that Gao Qiao'er didn't dare to imagine it. The accountants and appraisers, as well as the two old managers of the auction house, were already dazzled by the number of items in the auction house. In the beginning, when he saw some high-grade items, he even asked Gao Qiao'er why she didn't keep them for herself. Was the main house being negligent? However, when the number of similar items reached a certain limit, everyone gradually became numb. No matter how unbelievable it was, they had to believe it. They couldn't not believe it. After working hard for a while, Gao Qiao'er asked everyone to take a break. Zhou Xiaoduo had already prepared a few pots of good tea on the coffee table outside. "This is a sky-high amount of wealth. Young mistress." An old manager of the auction house was trembling. He had worked in the auction house all his life, but this was the first time he had seen so many things at once. However, there was one thing that was very strange. How could such a rich and overbearing person have so many stones of astral souls? Wouldn't it be better to just save up the jade of astral souls? Look, just those stones of astral souls could be piled up into a real small mountain. It was hard to understand. Our family can get 5/1000 of the profits from these items, Gao Chao said lightly. All the accounts will be made public in the truest way. I don't want anyone to get involved in this. Once found, their entire family will be wiped out. I understand. Many people understood this principle. To be able to call the young mistress of the Gao family, the future head of the Gao family, to handle the transaction with just a phone call, and leave her outside without a care, it was needless to say how scary this kind of person was. Whoever coveted this kind of person's money would be an idiot. Of course, when the real benefits reached a certain level, it was not impossible for idiots to appear. Therefore, Gao Chao still had to beat them over and over again. If there was a problem with such a low amount of money, Gao Chao felt that she could kill herself to thank Zhuoxiaoduo. Moreover, 5/1000 of the commission was actually very awesome. At 11:30 in the morning, Zhuoxiaoyan rushed into Fenghai City like a whirlwind. She tore open the sky and drilled into it. Her whole body was like a white smoke, rushing straight into the hidden Dragon Villa district. Zhuoxiaoduo almost didn't take a breath along the way. At this moment, she could only focus on one thing. Kill the puppy. Kill the puppy. At this moment in the hidden Dragon Villa district, in Zhuoxiaoduo's villa, the dishes ordered by the first grade of the heavens had already arrived. Gao Chao ordered 4 tables, including a table of the best dishes, which were sent directly into the room. The other 3 tables were left to eat outside. As a partner, Gao Chao was naturally invited in for a meal by Zhuoxiaoduo. Gao Chao was embarrassed, but in the end it was Wu Yuding who came out to invite her in personally. Holding hands, they went in. The 4 of them sat around the table. Gao Chao was eagerly busy. Finally she finished. Just as she sat down and was about to eat, all of a sudden, the entire villa seemed to have entered the coldest days of the year. An icy aura enveloped the entire place. Then with a whoosh, a graceful figure appeared in front of the villa door like a fairy descending to the mortal world. Her body swayed, and she arrived in front of the door and pushed it open. Zhuoxiaoduo stood up and looked at the door in surprise. Then the door was suddenly opened. A graceful figure that he had been thinking about day and night appeared at the door. A warm smile appeared on Zhuoxiaolu's face. "Sai, my little cotton-padded jacket is here. Finally I have a helper." Wu Yuding, on the other hand, had a face that said, "As I expected, I know this girl's heart the best. But this girl came so quickly that I'm still surprised." In short, it was the kind of smile that said everything was in the palm of her hand. When she sent out the message in the morning, she expected this girl to be anxious. Sure enough, this girl had obviously risked her life to come here. Looking at that cold and murderous aura, Xiao Duo would not be able to get away with it. "Son, you're on your own now." Looking at Gao Chao, who was sitting at the table and eating, Wu Yuding instantly knew another thing, another subtle change. The little dog was in trouble. A great disaster was coming. "Wahahaha!" Zhuoxiaoduo shouted in surprise. Gao Chao turned her head. The moment she looked over, there was only a dazzling, soul-stirring sight. From her eyes, the person who came was a snow fairy from the heavens. Her whole body was cold and pure, with the coldness of the moon. She suddenly appeared at the door. Her face was so beautiful that it could topple cities. Her body was curvaceous and slender, and her clothes were whiter than snow. She stood at the door, right in front of them, but it was like a snow lotus quietly blooming on the peak of a snowy mountain that no one could climb. Her eyes, nose, face. Her face was gentle to the extreme, but her temperament turned all this gentleness into coldness. Even though she was right in front of you, you would still feel that she was a fairy in the clouds. She was so high up, so clean and transcendent. She was clean from the inside out, untainted by a speck of dust. Even if the mortal world was full of filth, nothing could taint her purity. There's actually such a beautiful girl in the world. Gao Chao, who always boasted about her beauty, couldn't help but be amazed. There were countless beautiful girls in the world. Gao Chao was also an outstanding beauty, but to be able to reach the level of Zhuoxiaoyan in front of her was rare. And to have such a face and temperament, Gao Chao could be sure that there was only one person in the world. Gao Chao was usually quite conceited about her appearance. Even in Fenghai City, people often praised Gao Chao as the #1 beauty in Fenghai City. But the moment she saw Zhou Xiaonian, a feeling of inferiority rose from her heart. That feeling was probably, she couldn't be compared, the difference was too big. She could only admire the high mountain, and couldn't even be jealous. Would an ant be jealous of a dinosaur? After Zhou Xiaonian entered the door, out of a woman's intuition, she saw Gao Chao at first glance. This wasn't because Zhou Xiaonian was unfilial, nor was it because she didn't see her parents, but a woman's natural defense of her territory. At first glance, she was a stunning beauty, very shrewd, very smart, very capable, and exuded a capable demeanor, but Zhou Xiaonian's heart was instantly half relieved. Ahem, the threat isn't that big. Then she saw Zhou Xiaoduo's face was full of joy, jumping, laughing, and rushing towards her. Humph, snorting in her heart, Zhou Xiaonian dodged Zhou Xiaoduo to the side and stood in front of Wu Yuding and Zhou Chonglu. Mom, Dad, I missed you so much. Zhou Xiaoduo missed, and Nian Nian the cat passed in front of her expressionlessly, as cold as frost. But when she arrived in front of her parents, she immediately smiled like a blooming spring flower. Her expression changed so quickly that it was amazing, but it didn't seem out of place. Standing on the other side, she scratched her head, puzzled. Why is she ignoring me? I really didn't offend her. It's good that you're here. Wu Yuding smiled and looked at her daughter meaningfully. You little girl, did you rush all the way here? Zhou Xiaoduo blushed and hugged Wu Yuding's arm coquettishly. Mom! Then he smiled and said, I was on a mission not far away. I was thinking of coming over after the mission was completed. So when I saw Mom's message, I immediately rushed over. How can a mission be more important than family reunion? Oh, Wu Yuding said in her heart, like hell I'd believe you. Judging from the degree of condensation of qi around you and the deduction of your own cultivation, if you didn't rush all the way here from the Nine Heavens Pavilion, I'd be blind. Chapter 7:10. Of course Wu Yuding wouldn't say that out loud. She said, Nian Nian was on a mission, so she definitely hasn't eaten yet. Xiaoduo, why are you standing there like a fool? Hurry up and get Sister Nian Nian a stool and utensils. Hurry up. Without needing to be told, Zhou Xiaoduo had already carried the utensils over. He said eagerly, Sister Nian Nian. Sit. Zhou Xiaonian didn't even look at him. She sat down and then looked at Gao Chao curiously. Mom, we have guests today. Wu Yuding was experienced and knew what her daughter was thinking. She explained happily, this is Xiaoduo's good classmate. She has helped us a lot. Her surname is Gao. She introduced her daughter and Gao Chao, a female classmate. A good female classmate. Zhou Xiaonian was alarmed, but she smiled even more warmly. Hello classmate Gao. Thank you so much for today. Gao Chao hurriedly bowed and said respectfully, hello Sister Nian. You're too polite. It's my duty to help boss with some work. Help boss with some work. Hearing these words, Zhou Xiaonian's heart that had been in his throat immediately fell back into his stomach. Then he smiled and started chatting with Gao Chao. Wu Yuding's evaluation of Gao Chao also improved. Her first sentence showed her attitude. This girl was really smart and knew when to advance and when to retreat. Zhou Xiaoduo interrupted several times, but Zhou Xiaonian ignored him. She just kept talking to Gao Chao. As long as she was talking to Gao Chao, she would put away her childish and mischievous attitude. Gao Chao felt that the person in front of her was like a fairy who had descended to the mortal world. Sitting in front of her, she was graceful, beautiful, and elegant. She had skin of ice and bones of jade, and a heart of orchids. In any case, she was full of energy and firepower. Zhou Xiaonian only had one thought. I want to see my people not dare to compete with me. Zhou Xiaonian successfully defeated Gao Chao with a simple chat. This wasn't Zhou Xiaonian bullying her. The moment Gao Chao saw her, she was already one step ahead of her and was convinced. Besides, Gao Chao didn't have any competitive thoughts. Now that she saw this situation, she was even more frightened. It was too difficult to steal a man from such an existence. Although Zhou Xiaonian called them father and mother, Gao Chao came from a big family. She understood everything almost instantly when she saw this posture. It was obvious that the man was in love and the concubine was jealous. There was no room for anyone else to intervene. The only outcome for those who forced themselves to do so was to be crushed by the joint forces of both sides and be reduced to cannon fodder, the kind that couldn't even raise a speck of dust. Therefore, from the very beginning, he agreed with Zhou Xiaonian and made his position clear. Sister Nian Nian, you're so beautiful. Gao Chao praised from the bottom of her heart. At first, we were all wondering why boss was so cold to the girls who tried to be nice to him in school. Some people even suspected that boss didn't like girls. You have to know that our hidden dragon school belles are all very good-looking. Today we finally know the reason. So that's why. Gao Chao had a look of realization. So it's not that boss doesn't like girls. It's just that his standards are too high. Anyone who has such a beauty at home would be disdainful of the so-called beauties outside. When Zhou Xiaonian heard this, she was even more elated. She also understood that she had really misunderstood today with this thought. She couldn't help but let down her guard and become even friendlier. Gao Chao couldn't help but sigh in her heart when she saw him being kind and joking around with her. If you had maintained that kind of oppressive attitude and unreasonably crushed me, my competitive and rebellious nature would have been aroused. Perhaps I would have been able to make things difficult for you, but the moment you became intimate with me, I felt as if we were sisters from the bottom of my heart. However, this kind of change in aura didn't leave any traces. What was going on? How did you do it? This kind of natural affinity was too irresistible, big sister. If the cold Zhou Xiaonian made people feel like they could only look up to her, respect her, and be unattainable, then the current friendly Zhou Xiaonian made people only want to protect and take care of her. They couldn't even have the slightest thought of hurting her. Anything that hurt this clean girl would be unforgivable. This kind of feeling was so unreasonable. It came from the bottom of her heart and was natural. After a while, Gao Chao simply held Zhou Xiaonian's hand and whispered to her in a low voice. Zhou Xiaonian relaxed and smiled more. Especially when she heard about Zhou Xiaoduo's interesting stories, her pair of beautiful big eyes instantly squinted like the crescent moon in the sky. Her smile was extremely sweet. Gao Chao was stunned and felt a sense of pity. Not to mention, this old servant's subtle feelings spontaneously arose. Zhou Xiaoduo shook his head and wagged his tail, wanting to come up and eavesdrop. Every time he was stared back by Zhou Xiaonian. Wait a moment. I may have misunderstood, but I still have to settle the score with you. Otherwise, I would have rushed here in such a hurry. Although others don't know why, I still feel uncomfortable in my heart. However, as long as I teach this puppy a lesson, I can immediately feel at ease and feel better. It was his fault. After Gao Chao finished eating, she hurriedly left to work. She really couldn't stay any longer. This girl is too beautiful. If I stay any longer, I will lose all my confidence. Gao Chao had already decided that in the afternoon or evening, she must find a few girls to compete with to regain her confidence. Otherwise, he would always feel like an ugly duckling with mud all over its body, standing next to a spotless snow-white swan. This kind of feeling was really terrible. Zhou Xiaoduo looked at Zhou Xiaonian eagerly. He watched as Zhou Xiaonian snuggled in Wu Yuding's arms and acted like a spoiled child to Zhou Chonglu. At this moment she was just an ordinary and innocent little girl. She was happy in front of her parents. What about me? Why are you ignoring me? Do you know that our parents have already promised you to me? You're already mine. This is already a done deal. Wife, do you know that? Zhou Xiaonian saw Zhou Xiaoduo's eager eyes from the corner of her eyes. She snorted and turned her head away. Finally, Wu Yuding felt sorry for her son, but she still waved her hand. Doggy, come here. Zhou Xiaoduo immediately ran over while wagging his tail. Mom. Zhou Xiaonian said. Mom, I heard that Doggy has hooked up with many beautiful girls in Hidden Dragon High School. Wu Yuding glanced at Zhou Xiaoduo and said, Doggy, are you serious? You have such ability? Zhou Xiaoduo was stunned. I don't have such ability. Zhou Xiaonian was also stunned. Mom, you are lying to me. You don't. Wu Yuding frowned. Zhou Xiaoduo solemnly raised his hand. I swear to the gods, to the heavens, to the great author, and to millions of readers. I really don't have such ability. Everyone can testify for me. Zhou Xiaonian quietly lowered her head. The corners of her eyes curved into a smile. That's good. Wu Yuding warned, if I find out that you are hooking up behind your sister Nian Nian's back, Humph, do you know the consequences? Zhuxiaonian was shy. She turned her body and pouted. Mom, you can talk about him. What does this have to do with me? Wu Yuding rolled her eyes. Yes, it has nothing to do with you. If it has nothing to do with you, then you ran 40,000 miles in one morning. Look at how sweaty you are. Don't think that I can't tell that you are sweaty outside. Do you really think that your mom is an ignorant woman? Let's not talk about the flow of yuan qi in your body at that time. When you first entered the house, your father and I were almost frozen. Doesn't that mean everything that now you actually dare to say? What does this have to do with me? Zhuxiaonian hurriedly complained. Mom, you don't know. Little Gouda has been stirring up a lot of trouble recently. The Sword King's high martial arts life, the Sword King's. All these things are really unsightly. Also, this kid's temperament is unstable. He really needs to be taught a lesson. Zhuxiaoduo felt wronged. I'm so obedient. Zhuxiaonian's face was as cold as ice. Yes, you are. Zhuxiaoduo, no. Zhuxiaonian, yes. Wu Yuding and Zhuchonglu watched the fight between their children. They didn't feel offended at all. Instead, their faces were filled with happiness and warmth. I really didn't. Zhuxiaoduo said. You said you didn't. Zhuxiaonian said. I was wrong. Faced with the argument, Zhuxiaoduo immediately backed down. Humph. I was wrong. Zhuxiaoduo apologized profusely. When there was no guilt in his heart, he felt no pressure saying that he was wrong. Although he said that he was wrong, it was just 3 words. Humph, how are you going to make it up to me? Zhuxiaonian said angrily. Tell me. I'll do as you say. Zhuxiaoduo immediately stood up to receive a beating. Zhuxiaonian puffed up her cheeks and thought for a while before saying, Sing and dance for me and Mom and Dad. That's it? That's easy. Zhuxiaoduo immediately felt relieved. Hence, he set up a posture in the living room and sang and danced. I'm the obedient Xiaoduo. I'm the obedient little doll. I'm Dad's little sweetheart. I'm Mom's good boy. I'm Teacher's good student. I'm Sister Nian Nian's little dog. Woof woof woof, woof woof woof, Sister Nian Nian, don't be angry, listen to me sing for you. Woof 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 woof, la 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 la. Woof. 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 Wah wah. A certain someone was acting funny as he sang. He winked at her, stuck out his tongue and wagged his tail. His face was full of flattery. It was obvious that he was acting as himself and didn't feel uncomfortable at all. Cough cough cough. Zhuxiaonian choked. She wasn't angry at all and was just putting on an act. Now that she saw this guy become a clown just to please her, she couldn't hold it in anymore. She bent over laughing, and the elegance of the moon fairy was gone. Ha 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 ha. Zhuxiaonian laughed until she couldn't catch her breath. She was completely fine now. Wu Yuding and Zhuchonglu almost died of laughter. Chapter 7:11. Even Wu Yuding couldn't help but feel some admiration in her heart. This kid really didn't care about his face. To be honest, when it came to coaxing his wife, it seemed like this little dog was even better than his father. But since he was fine, his father, Wu Yuding ordered, let's go to the yard and have a look. Xiaoduo is going to release a lot of things. Zhuchonglu stood up with a smile. Okay. The couple went out. Then, only Zhuxiaonian and Zhuxiaoduo were left in the room. The atmosphere suddenly became strange again. In fact, the two hadn't seen each other for only a few months, not even a year. Zhuxiaoduo was just a little taller and stronger than when they were in Phoenix City. He looked a little like a teenager who was turning into a young man. Zhuxiaonian didn't change at all. Her temperament was colder, cleaner, and more beautiful. She was still the same as she was in Zhuxiaoduo's memory. If there was a change, it could only be said that she was more beautiful and attractive. But the atmosphere was strange when only the two of them were left. Zhuxiaonian coughed loudly, stopped smiling and sat upright. She turned her head slightly and put on a cold and fairy-like appearance again, waiting for the little puppy to coax her. Miss Nianmao. Zhuxiaoduo rubbed his hands. Humph. Zhuxiaonian picked up the teacup and drank tea, looking straight ahead. Zhuxiaoduo turned a few times like a mouse playing with its tail. Finally, he got close to Zhuxiaonian's small and transparent ear. He didn't say anything, but his breath blew a few strands of her hair. Zhuxiaonian felt itchy and couldn't help but laugh again. But in the end, she forced herself to hold back and put on a fairy-like appearance. She couldn't be nice to him. She had to catch this little puppy today. She couldn't let him go out and fool around. She had to make him afraid. But how could he make him afraid? Zhuo Xiaonian frowned and thought hard. She couldn't help but sigh. If only she could tie him to her side. Sister Nian Nian, let me tell you, there's been a major development. Zhuo Xiaoduo winked mysteriously. It's about us. Zhuo Xiaonian, who had just made up his mind to ignore him, couldn't help but be distracted. He couldn't help but ask, what progress? Zhuo Xiaoduo hesitated for a moment, sneakily glanced around, and directly moved closer to Zhuo Xiaonian's ear. Zhuo Xiaonian tried her best to resist the itch. She pricked up her ears and whispered, what's the matter? Zhuo Xiaoduo smelled a fragrance, and for a moment he was infatuated, as if he had reached the end of life. He forgot what to say, and directly stuck out his tongue to lick the crystal-clear little ear. Wow! Zhuo Xiaonian jumped up with a bang. Her face was red as she pushed Zhuo Xiaoduo to the ground. Her voice was like thunder. Dog! You've got guts. She raised her fist and was about to rush over. Zhuo Xiaoduo's heart suddenly trembled, but he mustered up his courage and argued, our mother said yesterday that she promised you to me, so it's not bold of me to kiss my own wife. Nonsense. I don't believe it. Who's your wife? Zhuo Xiaonian suddenly felt relieved, but she had to put on a face and pretend to be angry. She shouted, I don't believe it. Mother would never do that. It's true, it's true. Zhuo Xiaoduo vowed. It's true, it's true. Zhuo Xiaonian stomped her feet and said angrily, anyway, I don't believe it. I'll go to mother now. I'll ask her to take back her order. She stood up and pretended to rush out. Zhuo Xiaoduo was anxious when he heard that. He didn't know what to do for a moment. He rushed forward and hugged her leg tightly. Don't go. Don't go. Zhuo Xiaonian struggled hard, but she felt that she couldn't break free. She said angrily, let go of me. You rascal. I won't let go. I'll be a rascal. Are you letting go or not? I'm not letting go. If you don't let go, I won't let go. I've prepared a gift for you. What gift? Huh? Zhuo Xiaoduo was a little confused. Did he just fool her? He hurriedly said, if you don't go out, I'll show you the gift, something bigger than the sky. Then I won't look. For this gift of yours, I fought with someone and was almost beaten to death. Zhuo Xiaoduo sobbed. My chest was even shattered. Zhuo Xiaonian was shocked. Let me see, is it okay? She unbuttoned Zhuo Xiaoduo's shirt as she said that. Zhuo Xiaoduo covered his chest shyly. It's okay. Bah. Why are you covering your chest? Zhuo Xiaonian was angry and amused. Zhuo Xiaoduo climbed up with a smile. There are so many good things. They'll definitely surprise you. All of them will be of great help to you. Look how good I am to you. I miss you all the time. Let me see. Zhuo Xiaonian blushed. Then, Zhuo Xiaoduo took out a jar of wine. Wine? Is this what you mean by something bigger than the sky? Zhuo Xiaonian widened her eyes. Yes, yes, this wine is a great thing. Zhuo Xiaoduo laughed. It's something you'll never imagine. In Zhuo Xiaoduo's heart, this wine was indeed the #1 item in the world. This was the truth. The ice soul space oil was not even 1,000th of this wine in Zhuo Xiaoduo's heart. Since it's a good wine, open it and try it. Zhuo Xiaonian wanted to say that she was not satisfied, but she remembered that this was a gift from Gouda, so she pretended to be curious. No. Zhuo Xiaoduo was startled and said, this is what our mother said. You can't drink this wine until you reach the Ascension realm. Once you reach the Ascension realm, drinking it will greatly increase your cultivation. Zhuo Xiaonian's eyes lit up. It's such a treasure? That means you can't withstand its effects until you reach the flying heavens, right? Then it's really a great thing, a great thing. She couldn't help but be fascinated. This was a wine that only flying heavens cultivators could drink. What a great thing. Of course. Otherwise, why would I say it's a great thing? Zhuo Xiaoduo revealed a cunning smile and said, remember to remind me when the time comes. I'm afraid I'll forget. When we reach the flying heavens, we'll drink it together. Each of us can only drink 1 cup per night. Isn't it amazing? Amazing! Zhuo Xiaonian exclaimed. Flying Heaven's cultivators can only drink 1 cup per night. It's really a great thing. She became even more fascinated. Don't forget to remind me, Swishaoduo said solemnly. I'm very forgetful, you know. Zhuoxiaonian nodded repeatedly, her eyes shining. Don't worry, I won't forget. She then engraved a soul brand in her heart. Flying Heaven's cultivators drink wine. When the time comes, I'll remind Gouda. Okay. After Zhuoxiaoduo explained this matter, he immediately put the wine away. Zhuoxiaonian wanted to ask, isn't this a gift for me? Why did you put it away? But she didn't ask. It didn't matter. Being with Zhuoxiaoduo was the same as being with her. At that time, she could still use this as an excuse to talk about it. Zhuoxiaoduo naturally had to introduce this wine first. This way, when his parents introduced it later, there would be no need to introduce this wine. He could just put it on the shelf and wait for the time when he could use it. Give me a thumbs up for this. Looking at Zhuoxiaonian's face full of anticipation, Zhuoxiaoduo was delighted. I'm even more looking forward to it. When the time comes. Out from the beginning to the end, he didn't let Zhuoxiaonian touch it. Zhuoxiaonian also didn't know that although the good things they talked about were similar, in fact they had different purposes. Now is the gift for you. The first one Zhuoxiaoduo took out a ring. Inside it was the Xian ice that Bing Xiaobing had just given to him. 8 cubic meters of Xian ice. Zhuoxiaonian took it and opened it. She couldn't help but exclaim this. This isn't Xian ice from the bottom of the sea. This is glacier Xian ice. No, ancient Xian ice? There are 8 cubic meters of Xian ice? The extreme coldness inside made Zhuoxiaonian feel comfortable from the inside to the outside. This effect was much better than the Xian ice that she had received. This is really a rare good thing. Zhuoxiaonian's eyes were shining. She held the ring in her arms and looked at it as if it was a treasure. These Xian ice were really useful to Zhuoxiaonian. With so much Xian ice, it was enough to build a complete cycle of Xian ice for her. Thus, it would grow and multiply endlessly, and the cycle would repeat itself. Zhuoxiaonian couldn't open her hands when she saw it. This gift was really to her liking. Dogda, how did you know that I was worried about the Xian ice? This is really a timely rain from the sky. He really put in a lot of effort. The second gift. Zhuoxiaoduo took out the second space ring mysteriously. With these Xian ice I am already satisfied. For a long time, I don't have to worry about the cultivation environment. Zhuoxiaonian sighed. She really didn't have anything else to ask for. Dogda is really my lucky star. I really want to give him a kiss. Open it first so that you don't miss out on the good stuff. Zhuoxiaoduo laughed. Zhuoxiaonian rolled her eyes and opened it. There are so many ancient Xian ice again. There were 7 or 8 cubic meters in the previous ring, right? There are more than 3 cubic meters in here? There are so many Xian ice. Zhuoxiaonian was so surprised that she wanted to pour the Xian ice into one of the rings. But when she used her spiritual power, she was suddenly stunned. What is this? Zhuoxiaonian exclaimed. Her voice was 1 octave higher. Zhuoxiaoduo said proudly. Our mother said that this is a betrothal gift for you. How could she not choose the best? Betrothal gift? Zhuoxiaonian blushed, but looking at the thing inside, he couldn't take his eyes off it. He couldn't take his mind off it. This is a complete, living ice spirit. Zhuoxiaonian's voice trembled. She was so surprised that she didn't even want to care about the word betrothal gift. So be it. I will accept it. But she couldn't say it out loud. She wanted to be a little proud, but now, forget it. But she couldn't say it out loud. She must go to her mother and act like a spoiled child. She wanted to express her dissatisfaction that she was arranged for her before she agreed. But shouldn't they be engaged after the betrothal gift? Dogda, let's see where you can run to. I'm so tired. Please vote. Gao Chao-er and the others had finished their work and left. They only left a list and moved all the supplies away. For the first time in his life, a miser like Zhuoxiaoduo was so insensitive to the departure of his belongings. He casually put the list on the coffee table and then walked in circles in the room, scratching his ears and cheeks. Xiaoduo, don't be in such a hurry. Mom, I'm not in a hurry. Shda. Wu Yuding rolled her eyes. You are like a lion that was suddenly locked in a cage. In the blink of an eye, you have walked in circles more than 10 times. You're not in a hurry. When Zhuo Xiaonian finally came out of seclusion, Zhuo Xiaoduo had already walked in circles in front of the door. Zhuo Xiaonian looked tired. How was it? Zhuo Xiaoduo asked hurriedly. How was it? Zhuo Xiaonian suddenly looked angry. She reached out and grabbed Zhuo Xiaoduo's ear and pulled him in. She pointed to the wall and asked, What do you mean? Zhuo Xiaoduo's eyes darted around. Finally, he said shamelessly, Sister Nian Nian, this is my lifelong wish. Your lifelong wish is to stroke a cat? Zhuo Xiaonian wanted to say stroke me in anger, but fortunately, she reacted in time. Yes, that's it. Zhuo Xiaoduo looked like a hoodlum. He puffed out his chest and raised his head. My lifelong wish is to sleep with you. And then, don't say it. Zhuo Xiaonian's face was as red as blood. Let's both take off the blanket. Zhuo Xiaoduo said righteously, not fearing death. Whoosh. Zhuo Xiaonian ran out with a red face. Her heart was thumping. Hooligan. I'm not talking to him anymore. I thought I was going to get even with him. Why did he come out himself? She went to the living room and saw Zhuo Chonglu. Her face was still red as if she was drunk. How is it? Zhuo Chonglu asked with concern. It's been activated. The ice soul spirit has regained its consciousness, but it still needs time to slowly reform it. After that, we can try to establish a connection with it. Zhuo Xiaonian's eyes lit up when she talked about the ice soul spirit. With this ice soul spirit and these mysterious ice, Zhuo Xiaonian had absolute confidence that she could reach the peak of the cloud transformation realm in 2 months. Then, she could start this round of cultivation compression. Once the ice soul spirit was subdued, it would be a partner for life. It would stay by her side for life. How long will it take to subdue it? Zhuo Chonglu asked with concern. Zhuo Xiaonian estimated and said, This ice soul spirit seems to have been suppressed. That's why it has been lonely for so many years. When I woke it up, it was very resistant. However, after I continued to inject energy into it to help it recover, its attitude softened a lot. So when I came out, it was very quiet. But this kind of spiritual object has a natural spirituality. I'm not sure how long it will take for it to recognize a master. Zhuo Xiaonian frowned. Zhuo Chonglu raised his eyebrows and said, At the critical moment, you can consider asking Xiao Duo for help. How can Xiao Duo help? Zhuo Xiaonian was confused. She didn't know what Zhuo Chonglu was talking about. Zhuo Xiaoduo had the sun attribute, which was the opposite of the ice soul spirit. How could he help? Wouldn't it make things worse? Let Xiaoduo use the Flaming Sun Sutra to its fullest to scare it. Zhuo Chonglu said seriously, Trust me. When you can't subdue it, this method is the most effective. Zhuo Xiaonian fell into deep thought. It's almost impossible to subdue such a natural spiritual creature if you blindly try to appease it. Zhuo Chonglu said seriously, Think about it. How many years has it lived? How many years have you lived? It has been fighting with many creatures since it was born. Do you think you can defeat it with some gentle methods? So the best way is to force it to recognize you as its master. When the ship has sailed, we can slowly communicate with it, Zhuo Chonglu said. Zhuo Xiaoduo perked up and said, Father, I understand what you mean. It's like finding a wife. She's not very happy about it, but whether she's happy or not, she has to get married first. After a long time, she'll accept her fate. Zhuo Chonglu, Wu Yuding, and Zhuo Xiaonian were speechless. This kid was hopeless. How could he say something like that so casually? This kid seemed to be implying something. Don't listen to your dad. He's too eager for quick success. Try to subdue it slowly. When you can't subdue it, you can ask Buddha to help you. Wu Yuding said, Now let's talk about a few important things. Zhuo Xiaonian blushed and said shyly, What is it? She wanted to talk about the poem again, but now that her mother had spoken, it seemed like she wanted to talk about marriage. Zhuo Xiaonian was embarrassed. Her heart thumped and she forgot about the debt. This matter was more important. On the other side, Zhuo Xiaoduo's eyes were shining. He sat up straight and said impatiently, Mom, I'm ready. Are you going to talk about that? Ahem. Zhuo Chonglu was disappointed. Can't you be more reserved? Why are you in such a hurry to find a wife? Zhuo thought, you're a full man who doesn't know the hunger of a hungry man. You don't understand the suffering of us single dogs. Although you haven't been in Fenghai for long, you've gained a lot. Wu Yuding said lightly, I didn't expect your dad and I to have a breakthrough in our cultivation. So, there are some things that need to be arranged. Zhuo Xiaonian and Zhuo were overjoyed when they heard that. A breakthrough in cultivation? That's great. Then, can I be a second generation that waits for death in the future? Zhuo's eyes sparkled as he asked. He was somewhat fascinated by this kind of life. Wu Yuding stared at him. Why would you think of a second-generation kid at a time like this? Zhuo Chonglu sighed deeply and said, Have you divided those things with Sister Nian? Yes. Have you sprinkled the spatial soil? Yes, but I haven't gone in to see the results yet. Okay. Then, do you still have the 3 drops of 9 Heaven Spirit Spring that Brother Xiaoyu gave you? Yes, they are. Dad, what's the use of that thing? Zhuo Chonglu said, Each of you can take 1 drop of the 9 Heaven Spirit Spring. When you break through to the Sky Soar realm, you can take a few more drops if you have the chance. But for now, 1 drop is enough for each of you. This thing is used to strengthen one's foundation. After taking it, it can strengthen one's divine soul and improve one's perception. Divine sense will also continue to grow. However, the biggest effect is that, after taking it, it will burn the residue. Residue. Zhuo Xiaonian and Zhuo were confused by this term. Chapter 7:13. The so-called residue is actually the residue left behind by the consumption of heaven and earth treasures. It's the resistance caused by the consumption of elixirs. It's the blockage of the Sky Soar realm that I mentioned before. After it's purified, it can turn the spiritual power in your Dantian into the purest energy. You can think of it this way. At your current stage, consuming a single drop will cleanse you of all impurities. Zhuo Chonglu said, in other words, after consuming it, your body will be completely purified. In the future, when you eat the same kind of food, you can still get the benefits. Do you understand? Yes. But this can only be done after your cultivation reaches a certain level. Otherwise, for example, when you're at the initial stage of the cloud transformation realm, after consuming a lot of foreign things, the impurities in your body will be too much. Once you consume the 9th Heaven Spirit Spring, your cultivation will drop by 1 stage or even more because too many impurities are burned away. Zhuo Xiaonian coughed and said, I just broke through to the cloud transformation realm. Wu Yuding rolled her eyes. If it weren't for this, your dad wouldn't have said that you're at the initial stage of the cloud transformation realm. Silly girl. Cloud transformation realm. Zhuo was shocked. He turned his head and looked at Zhuo Xiaonian with confusion. Sister Nian, you broke through to the cloud transformation realm? Yes. Zhuo Xiaonian raised her delicate little chin and took it for granted. How many times did you suppress your breakthrough in the nascent soul realm? Zhuo asked sadly. About 18 or 19 times. About 20 times, Zhuo Xiaonian said. 18 or 19 times. 20 times. Zhuo calculated in his heart. If that's the case, it seems that I'm still not a match for her. Damn it. You can eat it whenever you want, but remember to eat it before bed. Well, Nian can eat it before bathing. Wu Yuding reminded them. Zhuo Xiaonian immediately understood. Okay, Mom. Actually, although Nian cat smells nice, she smells really bad when she's cleansing her meridians. Zhuo sighed. Zhuo Xiaonian glared at him. Just you wait, dog. Mom and Dad left right after the parent-teacher conference, but I took a month off. I'll seal your cultivation first, then go bungee jump 8,848 meters. It had been a long time since he had experienced the taste of his limits, right? As for the 3rd drop, Zhuo Chonglu said, Xiaoduo, you deal with it yourself. If you want to keep it for yourself, you can. For example, when you break through to the nascent soul transformation stage and suppress your Dantian, you can take a drop when you can't suppress it anymore. You can instantly evaporate some of the impure spiritual energy, and then cultivate again to suppress it. However, at your current cultivation level, until you reach the peak of returnance profound, you are only allowed to consume 1 drop per cultivation level. Do you understand? Zhuo Zhonglu said solemnly. Zhuo coughed. There's only this much. It'll be gone after one is consumed. How can I have more? Zhuochanglu snorted and didn't say a word. Do you think I don't know the two of you? Little Nianji is stronger and can be more stable, but little Zhuoduo, this little puppy, is really tormenting the world. Zhuochanglu wouldn't be surprised if he really got more Jiuxiao spring water. After all, the legendary Jiuxiao spring water rotated in the sky, and no one knew where it would go. It rose and fell with fate. Zhuochanglu wouldn't tell him that when he broke through to a certain cultivation level, the Jiuxiao spring water suddenly passed by his head and filled him with a mouthful of it. The spiritual effect of that mouthful of Jiuxiao spring water directly burned him from the ashes of that cultivation level to the peak of the sky realm. Dad, Mom, what was your cultivation level before? Zhuoduo was fascinated and itchy. It should be the top of the continent, right? Or the top of the influential. Or the heavenly king stage. The more he spoke, the more excited he became. Zhuoduo's face was almost in front of Wu Yuding and Zhuochanglu's. Please don't tell me that Nian Cat and I are actually the top second generation of this continent. Actually, you two are just biding your time and keeping a low profile. You're afraid that we'll become arrogant, so you've been hiding it all this time? Now that we're all grown up, it's time to let us know that we're the kind of second generation that others can't afford to offend. That's why. Zhuoduo's sparkling eyes were filled with anticipation. I really want to be one of those second generation. If I really am, then it'll be great. I'll carry my parents' flags and wander around the Astral Souls continent every day. That feeling. Just thinking about it makes me drool. Zhuochanglu and Wu Yuding were speechless. You guessed right. But we'll never tell you this kind of thing. Initially, he had been thinking about whether he should tell them the truth and tell them about his and his wife's identities, but now that they saw this guy's expression, the two of them were in no mood at all. They immediately extinguished that thought that if she really let him know the truth, from the looks of it, this little bastard might really start to lie on his parents' meritorious deeds and become a salted fish, never to think about growing up again. He didn't need to act. He was just a good-for-nothing. A top-notch one. Zhuochanglu could only think about it for a while. Then he revealed a bitter smile. You're thinking too much. Your mother and I are actually two wanderers. It's just that our cultivations are passable. Zhuoduo and Zhuoxiaonian both perked up. Their parents were finally going to talk about their past. This was a rare thing. Wu Yuding was also thinking about it silently. She sighed at the right time and looked a little down. Back then, when your mother and I were about to break through to the sky realm, we encountered a strong enemy. Zhuochanglu's face was filled with disappointment and frustration as he said, we all thought that we were going to be ranked among the top experts of the world just a moment ago. But reality gave us a head-on blow. A great battle directly knocked us down to the mortal world. We lost our martial arts foundation and were no different from ordinary people. The husband and wife lowered their heads at the same time and thought to themselves, what should we do next? Why didn't we think of this before? But after all, we have a strong foundation. Even if our foundation is damaged and we become ordinary, we still have a way to save ourselves. It's just that this method of experiencing the mortal world requires us to grind away the evil spirit and hatred in our hearts. We also need to let ourselves experience the great Tao and shed our spirit before we can hope to recover. Wu Yuding continued to make up the story. Now we've experienced the cultivation of the mortal world and the tempering of our souls. Finally, we're about to achieve perfection. Zhuochanglu sighed softly as if he was lamenting. In fact, he really couldn't make up any more stories at this point. He didn't know what else to make up. Zhuoduo and Zhuoxiaonian were filled with righteous indignation. Mom! Dad! Who beat you up back then? Who's our family's enemy? The siblings rubbed their fists and palms together. Who dared to beat my parents? Humph! I swear I'm not human if I don't take revenge. Zhuochanglu's eyes lit up. He murmured, even if your mother and I can recover our cultivation and have a chance to enter the Tao again, our foundation is too damaged. I'm afraid it'll be difficult for us to take revenge in this lifetime. Even if we recover, it'll be difficult for us to improve. If we want to take revenge, we really have to rely on you two. This seemed to be a small goal for the little dog. Zhuoduo said with a murderous aura. Who is it? Dad, you just have to tell us the name. We'll naturally tell you when your cultivation reaches a certain level. Our enemy was already a Skysoar realm cultivator back then. It's useless for you to know now, and it'll only add to your troubles. Moreover, in the past 20 years, we haven't made any progress, but that doesn't mean the enemy hasn't made any progress. Especially since the enemy is also a rare genius. Perhaps his cultivation has improved more than just a single step. Wu Yuting sighed. Who cares how high his cultivation is? Zhou Xiaonian and Zhou Xiaoduo shared a common hatred for their enemy. Their faces were filled with an expression of, I swear I'm not human if I don't take revenge. Done. Zhou Chonglu and Wu Yuting looked at each other and breathed a sigh of relief at the same time. Well, we've completed the final stage of training this time, which is the final stage of recovering our cultivation. Zhou Chonglu coughed and said, at that time we might fake our deaths. You two don't have to be sad about this. It's pointless to be sad. Fake our deaths? Zhou Xiaonian frowned. Something didn't feel right. Zhou Xiaoduo also widened his eyes. Both of them had the same feeling. Could it be that Dad and Mom had contracted some terminal illness or had a relapse of their old injuries? Were they using this as an excuse to not be sad? Zhou Xiaoduo hurriedly used his providence points and physiognomy to look carefully. However, Zhou Xiaoduo was dumbfounded. He still couldn't see anything. Don't worry. Zhou Chonglu laughed and said, it's just that they're not breathing and have turned into a corpse. They just look like a dead person. Ah. What? Zhou Xiaoduo and Zhou Xiaonian exclaimed at the same time. Then within a day the corpse will completely evaporate and turn into specks of light, melting into the void. That's when we'll go back. Zhou Chonglu said. Do you understand now? A corpse. The two of them became even more nervous. Don't worry. Zhou Xiaoduo and Zhou Xiaonian were still nervous. The ominous shadow shrouded their hearts and was difficult to erase. Then when will you come back? Zhou Xiaoduo sensitively grasped the key point. We've never had a similar experience before. Well, we've just recovered. I'm afraid we'll need about 3 years to consolidate our cultivation. Zhou Chonglu coughed and said without changing his expression, but you can rest assured that we'll call you as soon as we go back. Call? What kind of explanation is that? Zhou Xiaonian said suspiciously. Don't tell me you recorded it in advance? Wu Yuting smiled and rubbed Zhou Xiaonian's head. You're overthinking. Don't you know how to ask questions? Can't you tell the difference between a dead person and a living person? Even if you're an artificial intelligence, you won't have all kinds of personal habits, right? Zhou Xiaonian smiled embarrassedly. That's true. What if you forget? Zhou Xiaoduo still felt that this matter was too mysterious. Fake death and come back to life, the disappearance of the physical body, and the resurrection of the dead. Why did it sound so unreliable? It was too mysterious. How is that possible? Wu Yuting said angrily. How can I not want my own child? Chapter 7:14. Zhou Xiaoduo muttered, who knows? Maybe you two will be so happy together that you'll forget about us. Zhou Chonglu and Wu Yuting were speechless. That's what happened anyway. Zhou Chonglu said angrily, I told you in advance because I didn't want you two to be sad. Look at how suspicious you two are. Are you going to interrogate me and your mother like prisoners? We wouldn't dare. Zhou Xiaoduo and Zhou Xiaonian lowered their heads at the same time. I don't think we should have told them. It doesn't seem like a big deal to let you two wear mourning clothes and cry. When we come back, won't the result be the same? Is this worth lying to you? We're just afraid that you two will be too upset. Wu Yuting said with amusement. That's true. The two felt that this sentence made sense and finally felt relieved. So before we leave, we have to settle some things first. Wu Yuting said. The first thing is the marriage between the two of you. Marriage. Zhou Xiaonian's whole body burned when she heard this. Zhou Xiaoduo suddenly smiled and was overjoyed. If Nian Nian or Duo Duo has someone else in your heart, then let's not talk about it. And from today onwards, you're not allowed to have any improper thoughts. Wu Yuting said seriously, since the four of us are here today, let's cut the Gordian knot and set the tone. Nian Nian, do you have someone else you like? Zhou Xiaonian's little head was almost hanging on her towering chest. Her voice was like a mosquito's buzz. No. What about Xiao Duo? Wu Yuting asked. Swixiao Duo puffed out his chest and raised his head. His face was full of heroism. Mom, I like Nian Nian cat. Swixiao covered her face. What about Nian Nian? Do you like dogs? Wu Yuding asked. I'll listen to Mom. Swixiao's voice was low and delicate. She lowered her head, and it was obvious that even her neck and ears were red. Then it's settled. Wu Yuding didn't hesitate and made the decision. Today, I'll let you two get engaged. This time, not only did Swixiao's neck and ears turn red, but even her exposed wrists and fingers turned red. However, he did not object. Long live Mama. Long live Daddy. Swixiao Duo cheered. At this moment, Swixiao Duo was so happy that he was about to explode. He rushed forward and kissed Swichonglu and Wu Yuding more than 10 times in a row. He kissed Swichonglu and Wu Yuding so much that their faces were covered in saliva. Both of them looked at him with disdain. Sit tight. Yeah. He hurriedly sat up straight and felt his heart beating wildly. He thought to himself, what should I say as the opening speech on the wedding night? Today I'll let you two get engaged, but there's one thing you two need to hear clearly and remember. Wu Yuding said seriously, you still have 2 years to repent. In these 2 years, both of you can regret it. Huh? Swixiao Duo was a little dumbfounded again. Mom, my dear Mom, what do you mean by a period of regret? You're making my heart beat faster again. Now, to be honest, both of you are still undecided. Wu Yuding looked at Swixiao. The world is unpredictable, and the future is even more unpredictable. Little Gouda is our son, and we will do our best to take care of him. However, your dad and I are most worried about you, silly girl, hypnotizing yourself with things like repaying kindness and wronging yourself. Do you understand? You're also our daughter. Whether you become our daughter-in-law in the future or not. Mom, I won't. Swixiao blushed and looked up. Now is not the time to say whether you will or not. Another thing we're worried about is that you two may only be siblings. Even though your cultivation is much higher than ordinary people, and your strength is not bad when it comes to temperament and experience, you're still young people in your 20s. After living together for so many years, you may not be able to distinguish personal feelings from family. So today is just a talk. In the future, you still have 2 years to define your feelings for each other. Recognize your own feelings. 2 years is not a long time, but it's not short either. If it can't be transformed into feelings between a man and a woman, there's no need to delay each other. But if it's confirmed, it won't delay the New Year painting. Wu Yuding was very domineering. It's settled then. Both of you don't have any objections, right? Swixiao Duo rushed to raise his hand. I don't have any objections. I don't have any objections either. Swixiao's voice was very weak. If one didn't listen carefully, it was almost impossible to hear. Well, that's good. Wu Yuding said indifferently. I've already prepared the token. As she spoke, Wu Yuding took out a ring and gave it to Swixiao Duo and Swixiao. Then Swichonglu also took out a ring and read it to Swixiao Duo. Swixiao's fingers were trembling. I represent the South, and your father represents the South. Put the rings on each other, and it'll be fine. Wu Yuding put on a straight face and said to Swichonglu, in-law. Swichonglu said with a straight face, in-law. The two shook hands. From now on, we're a family. Ha ha ha. Swixiao and Swixiao Duo laughed at the same time. Swixiao, who was extremely shy just now, laughed until tears came out of her eyes. She grabbed Swixiao's left hand fiercely and put the ordinary-looking ring on it. She rolled her eyes and said fiercely, you better behave, do you hear me? Swixiao Duo put the ring on Swixiao's hand and promised repeatedly, I'll behave. I'll behave. Do you see? Dad's example today will be my example tomorrow. Think about it, aren't you moved? With a husband like this, what else can I ask for? Swixiao burst out laughing again. Swichonglu's face twisted and looked at Swixiao Duo. Swixiao Duo smiled apologetically and raised his face to show an obedient and cute smile. He showed that he was innocent and had no other intentions. He definitely did not mean to mock his father. After all, his father's example today would be his tomorrow. The wedding ceremony is complete. Wu Yuding announced. Why is it so fast? Duo was a little dissatisfied. He smacked his lips and said, "Don't we have to kiss or something? In your dreams." Xiaonian raised her head and made a funny face with a blushing face. She lowered her head and quietly turned the ring on her hand. Her heart was indescribably calm and peaceful. She remembered that when she was in Phoenix City, she heard a few teachers from the Star Martial Arts Academy talking about marriage. She remembered one of the words especially clearly. It was engraved in her heart. It's understandable for young people to pursue love. However, love has a freshness period. After a few years of marriage, love will enter a period of weakness. At this time, there will be constant quarrels and conflicts. After these quarrels and conflicts are over, it means that the most dangerous stage of love has passed. At that time, love will turn into family love. Love that can be successfully transformed into family love has the foundation to grow old together. If it can't be successfully transformed, most of them will face divorce and separation. Then, the lover who made the pledge of eternal love will turn into a passerby or an enemy. Being willful before marriage is emotional. However, being willful after marriage is the trigger for divorce. Therefore, the interpretation of love at every stage of life is different. It depends on what you want in life. When Xiaonian heard this, she was 17 years old and Duo was only 14. At that time, she thought a lot. What Xiaonian envied and yearned for the most was her parents, Wu Yuding and Chonglu's way of getting along. They talked and laughed. Her mother was always gentle and her father was always good-tempered. Even if there were occasional conflicts, it was always her mother who was shouting and her father who was softening. However, no matter what happened, it was always her father who took care of her mother. Many times, she felt that her mother was very happy and she was very envious. There was no pledge of eternal love. There were very few mushy words between the husband and wife. However, every little bit of life experience forged an unbreakable relationship between husband and wife. When she thought of building a family with strangers and breaking into the state of her parents, Xiaonian shuddered. Then she remembered that she once said when she was young, "Mom, I'll be your daughter-in-law when I grow up." Therefore, she started to have little thoughts. Of course, at that time, Duo couldn't cultivate yet, the gap was too big. Every time she brought it up, she would be scolded by her parents. Xiaonian had no choice but to not bring it up. She wanted to wait until she grew up. She didn't expect that little doggy could cultivate all of a sudden. Moreover, his cultivation progress was so fast that it was beyond her imagination. This sudden change was simply a blessing from the heavens for Xiaonian. She was even more determined that she and little doggy would be as happy as her parents in the future. Anyway, the woman is the head of the family. So what if little doggy's cultivation is not as good as mine? Even if his cultivation is very high, I'm the one who can bully him. As little doggy's cultivation progress got faster and faster, he became more and more handsome. Sometimes, Xiaonian was secretly happy. She was inexplicably happy. Every time she thought of Duo, Xiaonian would feel unusually at ease. No matter how mischievous he was, she only needed to feel at ease and happy when she was with him. The corners of her eyes couldn't help but curve when she saw him. Beating him up would make her feel very happy. Of course, this didn't mean that Xiaonian was deeply in love with Duo. She was far from that level. As Wu Yuding said, the two of them were still half-grown children. Their outlook on life, values, morals, and worldview were all immature. They also didn't know much about their own feelings. It could only be said that if Xiaonian and Duo were allowed to live like this for the rest of their lives, Xiaonian felt that she wouldn't oppose it. She wouldn't have any thoughts of opposing it. She didn't even have a reason to oppose it. Xiaonian really didn't have any thoughts of repaying the debt of gratitude. In her heart, she was a member of this family. There was no such thing as repaying a debt of gratitude. She definitely wouldn't sacrifice her happiness for the sake of repaying a debt of gratitude. The main reason why she thought this way and wanted to do this was that she felt very comfortable and at ease when she was with little doggy. That was all. You don't have to wear these 2 rings. They are just 2 very ordinary rings. Wu Yuding said, you just need to remember that one day, when you are faced with a life-threatening situation, there are 2 jade pendants inside. Just break these 2 jade pendants. Chapter 7:15. Swishaoduo put it away happily and said, "So Mom and Dad gave us a protective talisman each." He stood up and bowed, saying, "Hello father-in-law, mother-in-law." Wahahaha. Zhuo Xiaonian blushed and hit him twice. Wu Yuding and Zhuo Chonglu also hit him with a black face. If they didn't beat him up, they wouldn't be angry. After the three of them taught Swishaoduo a lesson together, the three of them laughed together on the sofa. Then Swishaoduo stood up and removed his hand from his head. He suggested excitedly, "Today is a big day. Let's go out for a meal as a family?" The three of them agreed happily. So, the family left Li Chenglong, who had just finished school, and went to rank 1 in the firmament. Today was a happy occasion for his family, so Swishaoduo left Li Chenglong alone. Li Chenglong was behind him, looking confused. "You're not bringing me to a meal?" Also, his eyes were dazzled. Who was this fairy-like little sister? Looking at Zhuo's happy face, could she be Zhuo's wife? Thinking about it, it was very possible. Li Chenglong immediately wrote a message and sent it to the class group. "Big news, big news. Zhuo's wife is here." Suddenly, the class group boiled like boiling water in a pot of oil. "Damn! Zhuo has a wife? Our great garrison store sends congratulations, we're shocked. Our Dafeng Hai sends congratulations, we're shocked. What does she look like? Do you have a picture?" "No pictures, no truth. Begging for Vice Principal Li to show us a picture. Naked in a world of ice and snow, 3,000 meters high in the sky, 300.5 turns around, kneeling on glass shards, begging for a picture. Same. All the students in class 1 were amazed. At this age, each and every one of them was filled with yearning for the opposite sex. Moreover, each and every one of them already had someone in their heart. Only class monitors Swishaoduo acted alone and led the iron and steel hierarch on a rampage. Li Chenglong was an idiot. Everyone in the class had already come to a conclusion. However, class rep's stubbornness made everyone puzzled. Now that he saw the news, he finally understood. It turned out that it wasn't that Swadabin didn't want to be tempted, but he already had that. Oh my god. This was really big news. What kind of woman could make Swadabin, who was as cheap as a bitch, protect his chastity like jade? The curiosity of the entire class had reached the point of bursting. Li Chenglong, ha ha ha. You want to see my photos? Below that were dozens of I wants. Li Chenglong sent out a voice message and chuckled. Red packet. Exclusive red packet. Without a red packet, what's the point of revealing a photo? It won't drop even if we don't have enough red packets. Instantly, exclusive red packets flew all over the class group. Some of the more impatient ones even sent out a few exclusive red packets. Everyone was not short of money. Li Chenglong received tens of thousands of red packets. After receiving the red packets, Li Chenglong went offline. His phone was turned off. Wahahaha. That felt good. Class 1 waited for a while and then waited again. Countless people started to Li Chenglong, but there was no response. After a full 20 minutes, someone sent a message with a weird emoji. Li Chenglong turned off his phone. Instantly, everyone was in an uproar. Li Chenglong, just you wait. Many people were roaring. First grade heavens. This meal was very comfortable. Zhuo Chonglu and his wife were the same as usual. Swishaoduo was also overjoyed and was more talkative than usual. Only Zhuo Xiaonian's attitude was more shy. She couldn't let go. The first half of the meal was quiet. At most, she would cover her mouth and smile occasionally. Haha. Mom, look at Nian Mao. When she was the daughter of the Zhuo family, she was so fierce. Now that she's the daughter-in-law of the Zhuo family, she changed immediately. She's like a lady from a respectable family. Zhuo Xiaoduo's death-seeking provocation finally caused Zhuo Xiaonian to fly into a rage out of humiliation. He immediately rushed over and gave Zhuo Xiaonian a good beating. After that, he became much more natural and even took the initiative to ask for a drink. After drinking a few cups of wine, he completely let go of himself. Zhuo Xiaonian crossed her legs and said in high spirits, Mom, you should have agreed long ago. If you find another daughter-in-law, she can't serve you so well like me. Wu Yuding squinted her eyes. Just now this girl was still so shy. He had only admired her for a few minutes. Why did she suddenly turn on her shameless mode? The shy atmosphere from the engagement lasted for such a short while. You see, I can cook and do laundry. I can make the bed and fold the quilt. I can also give you massages. In the future, you won't have any conflicts with your daughter-in-law. Zhou Xiaonian giggled and said, where else can you find such a good daughter-in-law like me? What if the little puppy is blind and finds a fierce one? Won't you be angry every day when you see her? Wu Yuding snorted and said disdainfully, as if you're not fierce. My son has been beaten by you since he was young. Why don't you say that? Do you think I don't care? Zhou Xiaonian was excited. She moved closer to Wu Yuding and said, in the future, I'll give birth to your son's children. Why don't you tell me how much I've sacrificed? I've beaten him up all these years. Just think of it as interest in advance. Wu Yuding snorted and said, daughter, let's be more reserved. We can talk about anything, but we should be more reserved. You're still a virgin. How can you talk about giving birth to children? Zhou Xiaonian rolled into Wu Yuding's arms and said, I'm not reserved. That's what you taught me. On the other side, the father and son looked at each other with a smile. For the first time, Zhuo Chonglu raised his wine glass and drank with his son. Son, you've grown up. Remember to be more mature in the future. You really need to change your greedy and stingy habit. Zhuo Chonglu sighed as he spoke. He thought of his temper. Many years ago, many elders had said, no matter where you go, there's not enough ground for you to scrape. You need to change your temper. You'll suffer losses. He agreed every time, but it seemed that he hadn't changed. In fact, it seemed to be getting worse. Yes, I'll change. Zhuo Xiaoduo agreed repeatedly. He was beaming with joy. In fact, he didn't hear what his father said. He felt that today was the second peak of his life. Yes, of course, the first was the wedding night. However, when there was a second, there would naturally be a first. This kid was probably already drunk before he even had the chance to drink. It was the textbook case that alcohol didn't intoxicate him, but he got himself drunk. When you're an adult in the future, you need to act like one, Zhuo Chonglu taught him. Zhuo Xiaoduo downed a glass of wine. Suddenly, he jumped onto the chair and announced loudly, no matter how old I am, I'll always be Mom, Dad, and Sister Nian Nian's puppy. Woof, woof, woof. Ha ha ha. The three of them swayed left and right. That night, the family of four had dinner. They ate until 11:30 p.m. They laughed heartily and felt warm and comfortable. On the way back, Zhuo Xiaoduo shook his head and pretended to be drunk. He tried to grab Zhuo Xiaonian's hand, but Zhuo Xiaonian shook his hand off. After walking a few steps, he tried again but was shaken off again. He tried again, shaken off again, and tried again. Finally, after countless attempts, Zhuo Xiaonian's white and tender hand was held in his hand. She stopped struggling and stopped moving. Zhuo Xiaonian pretended as if nothing had happened as he held her hand and walked forward. Her face was red and her heart was thumping, but she pretended to be calm. Speaking of which, the two of them had held hands and walked together. Since they were young, they had lost count of how many times they had done it. However, this time it seemed to have a different meaning. Even the mood was completely different and the feeling was even more different. Originally, when they held hands, they didn't feel anything. However, when they held hands this time, they felt as if they were being electrocuted. It was amazing. It was just a few words, 2 rings, and a ceremony, but it changed the original feeling. And the change was so huge. Zhuo Xiaoduo had a silly smile on his face. His mouth was on his cheeks as he held Zhuo Xiaonian's hand. One of his feet was high, and the other was low. It was as if he was stepping softly on the clouds, and his whole body was light as a feather. He didn't seem to care about the flashing neon lights and the coming and going of the crowd. It was as if there were only 2 people left in the world, and they were walking hand in hand. At this moment, Zhuo Xiaoduo only wanted to stand at the highest point of the city and shout, "Do you see this? This is my wife. Is she beautiful? Is she beautiful? My mom has been keeping her for me since I was young." Zhuo Xiaoduo was dreaming and laughing like a fool as he walked. Zhuo Xiaonian had already looked at him a few times. When she saw his idiotic expression, she couldn't help but laugh. Zhuo Xiaonian didn't know why, but her heart was filled with sweetness. This sweetness was a wonderful feeling that she had never tasted before. In the sweetness there was a mixture of satisfaction. She no longer felt lost in her previous life. In a trance, she realized that there was a broad road under her feet that led to the endless distance. Whether it was in her heart or in her feet, there was no longer any confusion or uncertainty. She just had to go. Ha ha ha. I'm a puppy. Zhuo, who was beside her, suddenly let out a wild laugh that shocked many people. Countless people looked sideways at him. This declaration was really earth-shattering. No one knew what this guy was thinking at the moment. In short, he just looked like an idiot outside the house. For a moment, Zhuo felt that she was going to die of embarrassment. She shook off this idiot and walked side by side with Wu Yuding. They quickly left the scene of idiocy. Zhuo sighed. His son was dumbfounded. Watching the mother and daughter walk further and further away, Zhuo solemnly warned Zhuo, who had woken up but was still laughing foolishly. Remember now, there is more affection between siblings and less affection between men and women. You can't force Nian. Understand? Understood. Zhuo nodded like a chick pecking at rice. He smiled foolishly. I'll wait for her to come and force me. Shda. Zhuo almost kicked him. He held back his anger and said, if you dare to force her, I'll kill you. Zhuo had a silly smile on his face as he said happily, Dad, I understand. You want to give Sister Nian time to regret, so that she won't be muddle-headed and mistake sibling love for love, wasting her life. I understand. But I won't let her regret it. Don't worry. Zhuo said, Father-in-law. Elder Taishan. Chapter 7:16. Bang! Zhuo long-awaited kick was finally unleashed. Zhuo flew out like a toad. It seemed like this was the first time Zhuo had kicked someone. It was the first time, but it might not be the last time. Starlight Mountains. The Astral Souls, Tao League, and Alliance had not stopped working during this period of time. They did not waste any time at all. It was the first time for many of the elite fighters transferred from the 4 military camps and the long-term frontline personnel of the Wizard Alliance to cooperate with their previous enemies. They had to work together in order to complete the task as soon as possible. They worked together to cleanse the blue sky with their murderous aura. To be honest, this feeling was really weird. It was even a little fucked up. Yesterday, I scolded his ancestors on the battlefield. He slashed me and I slashed him with my axe. Today, we're here to explore the ruins together. A general glanced at the general of the Wizard Alliance next to him while he was working. His eyes were full of malicious intentions as he glared at the general. Go back and continue to beat him up. What's the big deal? Let's work first, then we don't have to look at him anymore. What's the saying? You stare into the abyss and the abyss stares back at you. It's like when you look at him from the corner of your eyes, he looks at you from the corner of his eyes and talks to the people next to him. Fuck. That bastard must be cursing me. The generals of the Alliance felt very strange at this moment. As the saying went, everyone had the same thought. Everyone felt the same way. Someone had already started to invite him. Hey, that guy over there, Tai Mengru, he beat me until I vomited blood 2 days ago. Are you satisfied? Do you want to drink tonight? Do you think I won't beat you up at the table? On the other side, no problem, we're in the Astral Souls. This is my home, I'll treat you to a drink. Let's see who gets drunk first. When we're done and satisfied, we'll work harder next time. Great. Ha ha. I have countless enemies in the Astral Souls. Who wants to treat me to a drink? Is there anyone here? Fuck off. I have countless enemies. Do you think I'm giving you face? Shda. In short, it was a clamor everywhere was like this. Right now, the 3 sides were all mixed up. You had me and I had him. It was hard to tell which side was which and which side was the way. To be honest, these people who had been fighting on the battlefield for a long time, no matter how elegant and graceful they were, would quickly become full of vulgarities. If they didn't spit out vulgarities, they wouldn't open their mouths to speak. There was probably no other reason. In this kind of situation, not knowing how to scold people was a huge disadvantage. More than 99% of the veteran generals could swear for an hour without repeating themselves. The remaining 1% had basically reached the point where he could curse for 3 hours without repeating it. There were even people who were tirelessly researching how to create new scolding words. Regarding this, many ordinary people in the astral souls often felt puzzled and even despised it. Logically speaking, soldiers should be more cultured. Why did they have so many vulgarities when they opened their mouths? But as long as you were in the kind of life and death situation where you could go back and forth in a second, you would know, understand. I might be on the battlefield tomorrow, and you still want to talk to me about being civilized and polite? The next moment, I'll be a pile of meat paste in the hands of the other party. At this moment, according to your thoughts, shouldn't you say hello? Thank you for your hard work? After being used to life and death for a long time, these people had seen through everything. Most people didn't feel anything when they were scolded in front of their ancestors. Scold. See if I don't chop you to death with my axe. It was different from the people in the mainland who would fly into a rage when they heard a word of sarcasm. Here, they were already very calm and collected. They completely ignored it and just wanted to kill. Just like now, when facing a mortal enemy, they worked together to complete a goal. They only felt a little uncomfortable in their hearts, but there was no sense of resistance. Everyone knew in their hearts that completing this mission was only because of the military order. After completing this mission, they would still go out and chop each other. Their standpoints would still be completely different, and they would still be on opposite sides. They couldn't be reconciled. Therefore, taking advantage of this opportunity to drink a glass of wine with the person they were about to kill or the person they were about to kill, wasn't it a wonderful feeling? This was a fucking rare experience. Many people would say, you have a blood feud with each other, but you can still drink and laugh? This sentence actually didn't exist. On the real battlefield, there was no such thing as hatred. There was only life and death. Life and death really didn't matter. It didn't matter if you chopped me to death, but one day you would also be chopped to death. There were very few frontline soldiers who could go to the battlefield alive, less than 1 in 10. Of course, they were angry and sad when their fellow soldiers died in battle, but they didn't have any hatred. They weren't fighting for themselves. I'll just get back what I lost for my brother. And this kind of mood and feeling was the kind of emotion that people who didn't have special experience would never understand in their lifetime. This became the reason for their scolding, and it was also very strange. Don't persuade people to do good if you haven't experienced hardships. Don't laugh if you haven't experienced life and death. These people belonged to the kind of people who said that they had experienced hundreds of battles would be an insult. Each of them had at least 100,000 blood debts in their hands, and the evil spirit on their bodies had already formed a blood cloud. Thousands of people erupted at the same time, and the blood cloud suddenly soared to the sky, straight to the heavens, and dyed the sky red. When everyone's baleful aura soared to a certain height, they all felt a strong obstruction. Then everyone simultaneously gathered their energy, gathered their power, and stopped the blood cloud in midair. They didn't even need to be ordered, and were as orderly as a guard of honor. The next moment, roar! Everyone exhaled and roared at the same time. The blood cloud was like the rising tide of the sea, rising wave after wave in the sky, as if it was competing with the sky peak, and each wave was higher than the previous one. Below on the mountaintop, countless people were looking up. These were their respective troops, or the families of skilled craftsmen selected from the continent. They were only waiting for the space relic to appear, and then they would go forward to try to crack it. This continued for about a day and a night. In the early morning of this day, when the sky had just begun to brighten, as the blood cloud erupted violently like never before, clang! The crisp sound of a bell rang out. This bell was melodious and intense, as if it came from ancient times, but also as if it had existed since ancient times. It rang clearly in everyone's heart. Everyone felt their minds clear up for a moment at this moment. On the peak, the 11 Grand Magi, the 7 swords of the Tao League, stood up together. Their expressions were solemn as they looked at the position in the sky where the bell rang. Their expressions were very ugly. That kind of nervousness. A few people's eyes widened the moment they heard the bell. Even the pores on their faces seemed to open, and there was a hair-raising feeling. Emperor Zhaixing, the left and right heavenly kings, and the others were puzzled. Compared to these old monsters who had lived for countless years, the top powerhouses of the Astral Souls continent were all rising stars, and their knowledge was relatively limited. What's wrong? Emperor Zhaixing frowned and asked. In fact, he already had a vague guess in his heart, but he was unwilling to believe it. Because that was too cruel. For the 11 Grand Magi and the 7 Swords of the Tao League to have such a reaction at the same time, something big must have happened. Hopefully it wasn't what he thought. This ruin doesn't belong to the ruins of the Magi, Tao, or astral souls. It's the space domain of the Demon Alliance. Tension appeared on the face of the Great Witch of Fire, and there was even a faint trace of fear. That bell just now. Is it the legendary? The Fire Grand Magi's face was filled with indescribable awe as he slowly said. The sound of the Donghuang bell. Donghuang. Yu Xingchen felt a sudden jolt in his head, and he instantly felt a dazzling dislocation. Indeed, the worst-case scenario had occurred. Could it be that this is the legendary Donghuang spatial ruin? Emperor Zhaixing Yu Xingchen was one of the few people with the highest cultivation in the Astral Souls continent, but now his palms were sweating and his mouth was dry. He even stuttered. Impossible. The Fire Grand Magi slowly shook his head, staring at the sky, and slowly said, if it's the Donghuang ruins, even if we gather all of our strength, it's difficult to break. Here. As he said, he swallowed his saliva and said with his eyes staring straight, we need more reference. The Ice Grand Magi's whole body was covered with frost. He took a deep breath and said solemnly, however, the place where the Donghuang bell is located is not set up by ordinary demon clans. This means that the Demon Alliance is about to return. Otherwise, the Demon League's ruins wouldn't have appeared under the suppression of the Donghuang bell. It's because I sensed it that I was able to reappear in this world. What will happen if the demon clans return? Yu Xingchen looked serious. Grand Magi Dan Kong sneered and said, nothing much. It's just adding another party to the war in addition to the existing 3 parties. It's just a fight. If the Demon Emperor really returns in a big way, our Lord Zhu Wu will also come out again. That time. Yu Xingchen imagined that situation. Suddenly, his whole body turned cold and his whole body stiffened on the spot. Even his breathing seemed to be gone. Yu Dongtian took a deep breath and said, how's his combat strength? His question was out of the blue, but everyone understood what he meant. The Ice Grand Magi's face suddenly darkened. The King of Zwulu asked, I heard that the Flood Witch has come out again. How is his current cultivation compared to the Demon Emperor? Can it be compared? The Fire Grand Magi looked bitter and said with a bitter smile, 2 words can answer your question. The King of Zwulu said in a deep voice, may I ask what 2 words it is? The Fire Grand Magi's face twisted and he said word by word, ha. What did these 2 words mean? That was clear to everyone. In an instant, everyone's mood was suppressed to the extreme by these 2 words. Please vote. I've tried my best. In this chapter, the real framework and plot of the heterodox world finally began. Are you excited? Chapter 7:17. The blood cloud stirred and made a buzzing sound. Everyone looked up at the same time. The blood cloud formed by the monstrous murderous aura was still rolling and steaming, trying to rise up, but there seemed to be an unshakable mountain range above the void. It could not rush up, and it was difficult to cross the other side of the natural moat. Legend has it that the ancient liches were mortal enemies. Yu Xingchen murmured. The Fire Witch sneered. The Demon Clan and any other race are mortal enemies. In ancient times, the Demon Clan was the master of heaven and earth. Wu people, elves and demons. They are just food for the Demon Clan. Why, you still want to ally with the Demon Clan? The Fire Witch sneered. Just as he was talking, above, the Flood Witch, who had been standing at the highest point, suddenly shouted, all of you go. Okay. The 7 Swords of the Tao League, the 10 Great Witches, the left and right Heavenly Kings, the 4 Great Commanders and so on, all flew down together and joined their respective military formations. They commanded together, exploded with murderous aura, and charged into the void forcefully. With the addition of these people, the rising momentum of the blood cloud was unprecedented, and it rose steadily. However, even if everyone worked together, It was still as if they were holding something as heavy as a mountain. They were barely holding on, and it was difficult to cope. As time passed, everyone felt as if there was a huge mountain pressing on their chests, and they couldn't breathe. On the peak of the Starlight Mountains, the wind whistled back and forth. The Flood Witch stood alone on the top of the mountain. He stood upright, his messy hair fluttering in the wind, and his robe was blown by the wind, making a popping sound. It was as if his whole person was a mountain. He was the sky. He was God. His gaze was solemn, and a sudden sense of oppression made his face a little heavy. He slowly stretched out his hands, and with a flash of black light, he was already holding the pair of invincible Thousand Souls nightmare hammers in his hands. He slowly spread them out. One left and one right. One hammer pointed to the sky, and the other to the ground. That was the starting gesture of the Thousand Souls nightmare hammers. The Flood Witch stared at the empty space in front of her without blinking. The gale suddenly increased in intensity, producing a crazy shio-shio sound. At the top of the mountain, several iron trees that were still standing after countless years of being hit by meteorites were actually chopped into sawdust by the crazy wind blades. Branches were separated from the main body in a short period of time, flying to God knows where. Even the main trunk was slowly tilting under the impact of the numerous wind blades. All of a sudden, the main body of the ironwood broke apart and flew away with the hurricane. Roar! Below, the Great Witch of Raging Fire looked up to the sky and roared. The 10 great witches roared at the same time. Together, the tens of thousands of experts present, the experts of the 3 clans of the Sorcerer Dao and Human Dao, roared in unison. They used all their strength to release the greatest aura they had ever released. An unprecedented ferocious aura suddenly rushed up. Screech! The clear voice of a phoenix could be heard faintly. After that, there was a bang, and a strong light appeared in midair. It was extremely brilliant and dazzling, and it actually caused everyone present to be blinded. The dazzling light shone and shone for thousands of miles. Thousands of rays of light, thousands of auspicious colors. A majestic and magnificent palace gate suddenly appeared in midair. It was suspended in midair, and it looked extremely sacred and solemn. A golden gate that seemed to connect heaven and earth emitted a golden light. The next moment, the gate suddenly opened. A majestic demonic aura suddenly rolled out. A black shadow rushed out with a whoosh. The Flood Witch roared and suddenly rose from the ground. She shouted, "Hammer!" Her whole body rolled up into a violent whirlwind that went straight to the 9 levels of heaven. The moment she moved in the air, she had already stopped the hurricane in the sky. Within 1,000 miles, all the energy of heaven and earth turned into a vortex in an instant, and all of it condensed on the pair of hammers. With a bang, it turned into a sky-high black gas, and with the power that could break the sky, it smashed towards the Flood Witch. Thousand Souls Nightmare Hammer, full attack. At this moment, a radius of 3,000 miles was shrouded in darkness. In Fenghai City, Zhuchanglu and his wife, who had just returned from a walk, were looking at a certain place in the sky in the courtyard. It should be over there. The strong wind made their clothes flutter, and their eyes were solemn. I hope it's the remains of the Umno Alliance, or the Human Dao League. It doesn't matter even if it's the elves, Zhuchanglu said softly. As long as it's not from the Demon Alliance, it's fine. Wu Yuding smiled bitterly. I'm afraid things will go against our wishes. Everything has its own fate. The Demon Alliance is about to return. There's a reason why the remains appeared at this time. Zhuchanglu shook his head and didn't speak. His face was rarely gloomy. In the early hours of the morning, the sky was exceptionally cold, and the moment the dawn rose, a bell suddenly rang. It was distant and clear, as if it was ringing on the horizon, as if it was ringing outside the 9 levels of heaven, and as if it was ringing in everyone's heart. Zhuchanglu and his wife's faces suddenly changed. What's that sound? Wu Yuding's heart trembled, and her beautiful eyes stared into the distance. It's so powerful. A corner of the Dao realm shackles in my heart had already been broken, but this bell actually broke another corner of the remaining shackles. Zhuchanglu smiled bitterly and shook his head. Things really go against our wishes. What we fear will happen. The remains of the demon alliance just have to appear. Zhuanglu's face was filled with bitterness as he said, since the beginning of time, there has only been one bell that can affect our Dao hearts with just a slight sound. Wu Yuting blurted out in surprise, Donghuang's bell? Her eyes instantly became deep, and she couldn't help but turn back and look at the villa. Among them were his son and daughter. They were still in the prime of their youth. If Donghuang really returned, don't worry, Zhuanglu said softly. Donghuang didn't ring the bell himself. Otherwise the sound wouldn't just stop here. I think it should be a secret realm of the demon clan. The reason why Donghuang's bell rang is probably because of the command left behind by the demon clan in the world. This bell, although clear to the ear, is actually very weak. It should be a trace of aftertaste left behind by some expert of the demon alliance when Donghuang rang the bell with Donghuang's consent. It's the alarm bell of the entire secret realm. Zhuanglu faintly said. If it's really the Eastern Emperor who's ringing the bell, then this is going to be a big joke. You and I should have been shaken back by the sound of the bell. Wu Yuting sucked in a cold breath. Trace. Aftertaste. If it was really just a trace of aftertaste, wouldn't it be even more terrifying? Moreover, after the Great War, the top leaders of the various clans are all crippled and have fallen into a deep sleep. His Majesty Donghuang should be no exception, Zhuanglu said. When he mentioned Donghuang, his expression was still respectful, and he used honorifics. Suddenly, between heaven and earth, endless rays of light swept across the world. The whole world was filled with a magnificent light that was brighter than the scorching sun at noon. It appeared. Zhuanglu couldn't help but take a deep breath and murmured, I just don't know if it's a relic or a secret realm. If it's a relic, the risk is not great but the benefits are not small. But if it's a secret realm, of course the benefits are more, but the risks that come with it will only be greater. But whether it's a relic or a secret realm, the moment it was discovered, it had already pointed out the coordinates of the continent of the Demon Alliance, which is now wandering in the starry sky. Zhuanglu's eyes were deep. We can't wait anymore. This time there are at most a few months of buffer time when we go back to King Qi's tomb. If we still haven't found it, we have to return. From this moment on, the situation of the continent will be very different. The so-called astral souls will change the world. From now on, it will completely enter the mode of flesh and blood grinding. Zhuanglu gasped, and his voice was like a little choked in his throat as he said slowly, Xiao Duo. Xiao Nian. Hurry up. Grow up. Wu Yuting's warm and soft hand quietly reached into her husband's hand. Her 5 fingers held tightly, and she whispered softly, We have cultivated hard all our lives and refined our hearts in the mortal world. Isn't it for this day? Zhuanglu nodded slowly. At this moment, the hurricane that was blowing wildly in the sky came to an abrupt stop. It was as if someone had suddenly frozen the world, and even the sound of the wind that was blowing in the sky was frozen together. Then the whole world, from the extreme brightness just now, instantly turned into complete darkness. It actually turned from extreme brightness to endless darkness in an instant. Then, an earth-shattering power suddenly appeared. Even though it was so far away, it could still be faintly felt. Flood has made his move. Zhuanglu hadn't finished speaking when he suddenly heard a violent explosion from a distant place. Then a loud rumbling sound was heard. The ground under their feet vibrated because of this earth-shattering blow. Countless high-rise buildings also shook as if they were about to collapse. The drama of power and influence was like this. With a whoosh, Zhuanglu ran out naked with only a pair of boxers on. Dad, Mom. Seeing Zhuanglu and Wu Yuting, he was relieved. Zhuanglu just felt that it was an earthquake just now, so he subconsciously ran to his parents' room. If his parents were hit by the earthquake at the critical moment of their recovery, it would be very bad. That when he opened the door and saw that they were not there, he immediately ran out. Seeing that his parents were safe, he was finally relieved. At the peak of the starry mountains, in the air, the door opened and a strong demonic aura suddenly rushed out. Then a ray of light instantly rushed out like a flowing light. As soon as it appeared, its body suddenly turned into a huge figure. Its whole body was pitch black, and its wings were just about to spread out. However, at this moment, the earth-shattering tornado created by the flood which had already arrived. The hammer that shook the world and turned the world upside down hit the head of the monster that had just appeared without any fancy moves. The huge hammer that was surrounded by a vast black light fiercely locked onto the demon that had suddenly appeared. The flood witch seemed to have only hit once, but this time she had used all her strength. Even Zhuochonglu would never dare to take such a full-strength attack head-on when he was in his prime. One could imagine how powerful it was. Chapter 7:18. Boom! It was an extremely dull sound. A hammer the size of a small mountain formed from pure black gas smashed into the monster's head, knocking it down from the sky. The great flood witch was still unwilling to let go. The huge hammer pressed down firmly, and fell down like a meteor falling all the way. The whole sky suddenly fell down as if it was collapsing. The 10 great shamans, the 7 swords, and the left and right heavenly kings attacked together. All of a sudden they moved everyone on the ground. The next moment, after the earth-shattering rumble, the big bird-like monster was smashed down to the top of the mountain by the flood witch's hammer. At this moment, the mountains that were tens of thousands of feet tall collapsed as if they were made of flour. The flood demon god's figure was still so dazzling in the center of the collapsing mountains, and the black smoke that filled the sky was still so eye-catching. The hammer continued to fall. It gave people a feeling that this hammer was going to smash through the earth. It wouldn't stop until it reached its goal. A shrill scream sounded. Who is it? 3 black lights rushed up against the current. The flood witch let out a long scream. She used the Thousand Souls Nightmare Hammer again and smashed the 3 black lights into pieces. A shadow flashed in the soaring black gas. A pair of eyes looked at the flood witch in the void for a second. Then it suddenly dissipated. The flood witch laughed. Ha! Kunpeng, you also have a day like this. At this moment the flood witch was standing in a super big pit that was 700 to 800 meters deep and 10,000 meters wide. She laughed wildly. The 1,000 feet high mountain and the surrounding mountains were completely destroyed by her hammer. The residual force even smashed the ground into a big lake. It was really destroying the world and rebuilding the universe. Under her feet was an extremely huge demonic beast. It was shaped like a big fish but had wings. At this moment, the body of this huge demonic beast was slowly turning into flowing light and dissipating bit by bit. The fire witch jumped up in surprise. Big brother, is it Kunpeng? Did he die? The flood witch shook her head and said, Don't be so optimistic. It's just a strand of Kunpeng's primordial spirit. It's worlds apart from his true body. Hearing this, the great fire witch's expression turned to disappointment and he said, Oh. Looking at the huge demonic beast that was slowly melting in the big pit, the great fire witch said, What can be left behind? The flood witch was also paying attention. She said indifferently, A monster core must have been left behind. After all, this is where his primordial spirit resides. After being trapped in this palace for so many years, it's only right for him to cultivate a new monster core. It's a pity that it's not the Kunpeng's true body. The ice nether witch said bitterly. The flood witch snorted. She kept silent for a while, and then said in a low voice, If this is the real Kunpeng, then the one lying down here is me. After a while, the Kunpeng completely turned into light spots and disappeared. Only an egg-sized bead was left behind. It was black and full of cracks. It actually self-destructed. The flood witch waved her hand and took it in her hand. She couldn't help but sigh. If it self-destructed, it was already a waste. She couldn't get any aura of the Kunpeng from it. In midair, the majestic gate still existed. But after the Kunpeng rushed out, it quietly closed. Let them try and see if they can reopen the gate without damaging it. The flood witch said indifferently, This gate is made of primordial gold crystal. If the gate is damaged, I'm afraid the location will only be clearer. Of course, he could directly smash it with a hammer. But the result of doing so was equivalent to providing a more obvious coordinate for the continent of the Demon Alliance that was wandering in the starry sky. After listening to the flood witch's instructions, countless masters of the 3 continents flew up neatly. They stood in midair and looked at the huge pit on the ground. They were all in a daze. This was the real combat power of the flood witch? With just one hammer, she directly smashed the highest mountain within a radius of 10,000 miles into a lake. All the people who had encountered the flood Great Magus on the battlefield were drenched in cold sweat. Even the Emperor Zhaixing's eyes were twitching when he looked at the lake. Father, Yu Dongtian came over. Can you take this hammer? Bang! Yu Dongtian covered his butt with his hands and rolled away, but he was directly beaten up by the furious monarch Zhaixing. Facing his son's question, the Emperor Zhaixing didn't want to say anything other than beating him up. The situation of the continent has changed. The Flood Witch stood with her hands behind her back. She looked at the 7 swords of the Tao League and the leader of the Astral Souls and said indifferently, "Next, I'm afraid we have to pan for gold. Otherwise we'll all die." The people in charge of the 2 continents didn't say anything with a dark expression. The Flood Witch said indifferently, "Our current combat power is too weak. Whether it's you or us." She turned her head. Lei Dao, your Tao League opened heavenly wind and guided the vitality of the 9 heavens back to the continent. Is there a problem? Lei Dao's expression was unusually ugly. He was speechless for a long time. The Flood Witch snorted and said to the Emperor Zhaixing, "Tell that bastard to end it quickly and come back quickly. This matter can't be settled without him." Fire Shaman hurriedly said, "Boss, Zhuo is now in Fenghai City. His son will have a parent-teacher conference in a few days. He's here for the parent-teacher conference." The Flood Witch slowly frowned. She twisted her neck and looked at Fire Shaman with a strange gaze. Fire Shaman quietly stepped back and shrunk his neck. "I didn't do it on purpose. I just had a meal with him the night before yesterday. That's all." Boom! The soul-stirring hammer from before appeared brazenly again. In front of everyone, it hammered Fire Shaman from the top of his head to his heel. He was directly smashed into a thin piece of paper on the ground. Looking at the color, it was exceptionally bright. It was even brighter than the aluminum alloy that was just forged. This time it was really not fake. It was a real hammering without mercy. The aluminum alloy rolled up, and then a raging fire rushed out. After burning for a while, the fire grew bigger and bigger. Fire Shaman's figure had already appeared in the fire. Fire Shaman was after all one of the 12 shamans. It was one thing to be hammered flat, but it was not to say that he would die. His fire essence restoration technique was not beyond the law of life and death, but it could deal with this situation. In fact, it was not the first time that he was hammered flat. Otherwise, the other shamans would have come forward to stop it. When the Great Witch of 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 the Great Witch, then it was another aluminum alloy piece. "Boss, please spare my life." Fire Shaman's wife saw this situation and completely panicked. She looked like she was going to beat him to death. Under normal circumstances, the Flood Witch gave Fire Shaman 1 hit and all her anger disappeared. But 2 hits in a row was unprecedented. Once or twice there was still room for recovery. However, the Raging Fire Wizard's Raging Fire Elemental Recovery technique was not without a price. Every time he used it, he would consume a large amount of his own vital energy. He could only use it 3 times in a short period of time at most. If he was hammered a few more times, he would still have to give up and die. Fire Shaman's wife grabbed the Flood Witch's hand with tears in her eyes. "Boss, please spare my life." Humph! The Flood Witch's face was livid. She flicked her sleeves and left. "When he recovers, the 4 of you come to me." Isabis Shaman and Dankong Shaman looked as if they had lost their parents. Fire Shaman, this bastard was really deceiving them. "Boss wanted to find Zhuo and you still said that? Without your words he couldn't find him? When he found him himself he could still watch the show, right? In the end you fucking came to take credit, and even tricked me to you fucking fire. You are a little depraved." Now the door of the relic had appeared. Next, the Heavenly King of the Right personally sat by the door. The craftsmen and mechanism masters of the 3 families began to study it. The Heavenly King of the Right stood by the door. He looked calm and collected, but in fact he was quite nervous. If the Kuanpeng that came out just now really fought with him, he probably couldn't defeat him. He might even be killed by him. Fortunately, the Great Flood Witch took action and killed him. It seemed that the Great Flood Witch's strength was indeed much stronger than before when she returned. Now he just didn't know if there were other hidden demons in the door. If there were, how strong were they? He prayed to God that there wouldn't be another one with such terrifying strength. But the current position was snatched by him. Now he had to pretend that he didn't care at all. His face was full of confidence. It seemed that even if Dong Huang came out, he could kick him back. The king of Zhuolu wanted to come, but he was driven back by Yu Dongtian with disdain. Can you be stronger than me? Go back. Now Yu Dongtian was standing by the door with his arms crossed and a smug face. He wants to fight with me? All the credit is mine. Why do you want to fight with me? On the other side, the leaders of the three families were having a meeting. There was no need to make any agreement. But everyone's face was solemn, as if a storm was coming. They came to explore the relic with hope. The relic did appear as expected, but it was the relic of the demon race. Moreover, the Kuan-Peng's primordial spirit appeared. It could be said that the situation had taken a turn for the worse. If there was anything else inside, the situation would continue to worsen. Even if there were no other demons in the relic, there was still one thing that could be confirmed. This relic had triggered the sound of Donghuang's bell. It was equivalent to setting up a coordinate. It was believed that the demon alliance would return from the vast starry sky in a few years. This matter was like a huge rock that pressed down on everyone's hearts. Fenghai, Hidden Dragon High Martial Arts Villa District. Zhuochanglu and Wu Yuding were comfortably basking in the sun in the courtyard. Grandma Sher was also sitting with them, chatting cheerfully. Grandma Sher did not know who they were. She only knew that they were Zhuoxiaoduo's parents. She could not help but feel a little strange. How did such an elegant and graceful couple raise a frisky monkey? Zhuoxiaoduo was chatting with Zhuoxiaonian. Yesterday, Zhuoxiaoduo sneaked into Zhuoxiaonian's room to chat in the middle of the night. He shamelessly refused to leave and even wanted to crawl under the covers. Therefore, he was violently beaten out. Until now, his eyes were still swollen. That's too cruel. Zhuoxiaoduo felt wronged as he covered his face with a hot towel. I just wanted to chat. I didn't want to do anything else. Chapter 719. Zhuoxiaonian was still angry. Her face was cold. Like hell, I'd believe you. Puppy, you're up to no good. No matter what, we're still engaged. Zhuoxiaoduo muttered, let's not talk about the mosaic, but isn't it normal to kiss, hug and touch each other? Now you won't even let me touch your hands. It's better than before. Zhuoxiaoduo felt wronged. He felt wronged. Zhuoxiaonian was furious. I've watched you grow up. How can I not know this guy's temper? You can't let him go. You can't let him go. He's always been a pushover. He said he'd only touch her hands, but as long as you let him go, he'll slowly take his way to the last step for this goal. He'll slowly spend days and nights with you without sleep. The only correct way to deal with it was to guard against it to the bitter end, and never change one's attitude, and deal with the myriad of changes by sticking to the status quo. Zhuoxiaoduo pouted, I'll just touch your hands, just a touch. A touch. A touch. I'll just touch. That's enough. Zhuoxiaonian's expression was cold. She crossed her arms and raised her chin, watching him act. Anyway, no matter what you ask for, there's only one word. No chance. Zhuoxiaoduo, who had been struggling for a long time, finally gave up. He rolled his eyes and said, Nian Nian cat. Your look-preserving pill. What did you call me? Zhuoxiaonian's face suddenly became serious, and a layer of frost was scraped off. Sister Nian Nian. Zhuoxiaoduo's face was sweet. Your look-preserving pill. You haven't eaten it yet, right? Zhuoxiaoduo asked. Why? Zhuoxiaonian obviously hadn't eaten it yet. She always felt that she wasn't at the most perfect stage, so how could she eat it so easily? That's good. Aren't we going to drink the Jiuxiao Spirit Spring tonight? Zhuoxiaoduo said sneakily. The Spirit Spring is not ready yet. I need to consolidate it. Zhuoxiaonian frowned. What was this brat trying to do? I have something good here. Zhuoxiaoduo took out his precious purified jade lotus. These flowers are so beautiful. Zhuoxiaonian's eyes lit up. This is food. This thing is called purified jade lotus. Duo chuckled and leaned over. He lowered his voice and winked. I heard that if you eat this, you won't even stink when you poop. Bang! Duo was sent flying by the kick. Xiaonian blushed and glared at Duo angrily. She lowered her voice and growled. Don't you feel guilty saying such things in front of such a beautiful fairy? I'm telling the truth, Duo cried out, feeling wronged. If you don't believe me, you can ask Mom and Dad. Humph. Xiaonian held the flower and couldn't bear to put it down. Duo brought up the information about the purified jade lotus. Take a look. This purified jade lotus is suitable for unmarried women. After eating it, it cleanses the internal organs, translucent meridians, smooth skin and jade bones, untainted by the mortal world. For the rest of her life there will be no odor. For the rest of her life, she will be clean and elegant. Her heart will be exquisite and full of agility. Her astral souls will be ice and fire. A perfect universe. Duo read it out loud and said, Do you think I'm lying to you? If it's not the best thing, why would I give it to you? Xiaonian believed him, but she still couldn't bear to eat the purified jade lotus. Duo looked at her eagerly and urged, Eat it. You go out first. I'm not going out. I want to watch you eat it. I brought it to you. Don't I have the right to watch you eat it? Duo acted shamelessly. Humph. Xiaonian stood up and grabbed Duo by the back of his neck. Then she threw him out of the room as if he was a puppy and locked the door. Who knew what kind of filth would be forced out of her body after eating this thing? This guy actually wanted to watch her eat it. He really didn't know what was good for him. I'm a pure and innocent little fairy. How could I let you watch me make a fool of myself? Duo pleaded outside the door. Let me in. Let me in. I want to take a look. Xiaonian turned a deaf ear to his pleas. She made sure that the door was locked, closed the windows, and drew the curtains to make sure that it was tight. Then she changed into a set of loose clothes. He poured out a large cup of spiritual water and carefully ate the purified jade lotus piece by piece. This thing was an irresistible temptation for women. Even Xiaonian was no exception. After eating the whole purified jade lotus, Xiaonian circulated her energy throughout her body. She cherished this precious medicinal power and spread it to every corner of her meridians. Every drop of it melted, leaving nothing behind. Of course, every part of her body had to be nourished. After this continued for an hour, she could clearly feel that all the pores on her body were oozing out tiny bits of something like sweat dripping out bit by bit. This process lasted for an hour. Xiaonian only felt that her body was covered with a layer of cuticles, but her skin clearly felt smoother and tighter. Even some of the sweat pores that could be seen on her body had almost disappeared. In fact, they were still there, but they were almost invisible to the naked eye. The first thing she did was to rush into the bathroom and wash her body. She scrubbed every inch of her body carefully. After making sure that the layer of cuticles was completely removed, Xiaonian touched her own skin. She couldn't help but feel that she couldn't take her hands off her own skin. That feeling was simply like the most expensive, warm, and delicate porcelain. Her hair was dripping with water. She walked naked to the mirror in the bathroom and looked at herself carefully. She was stunned by the beautiful woman in the mirror. Her face was slightly red and her skin was smooth and delicate. So beautiful. Xiaonian instinctively judged that this moment was probably the most beautiful and youthful moment of her life. It was time to take the look-preserving pill. But she thought that it was still not safe. She called Wu Yuding and said, "Mom, come up." That voice was unprecedentedly sweet. Wu Yuding, who didn't know what was going on, hurried up. As soon as she went upstairs, she saw Duo sneakily sticking his ear to the crack of the door. His ear was almost stuck in the crack of the door. "Doggy!" Wu Yuding was furious. "What are you doing?" Duo didn't say anything and disappeared with a whoosh. Wu Yuding sighed. This son, if he got married, it wouldn't be difficult for her and her husband to realize their dream of having 2 grandchildren in 3 years. If no one urged him, he would be able to stay in bed until he was old after getting married. She knocked on the door. "Nyanner, Mom is here." Xiaonian's voice came from inside. "Is Doggy still at the door?" "I chased him away." Xiaonian was relieved. She put on a loose bathrobe and hurried to open the door. Then, she invited her mother in and locked the door. "What's the matter?" "Mom, I think it's time to take the look-preserving pill." Zhou Xiaonian looked shy. Wu Yuding was stunned. Zhou Xiaonian was 21 years old this year. This was the most beautiful age for a woman. Everything was pure and natural. It wasn't the kind of appearance that one would maintain when one's cultivation reached a high level. At this time it was the time for a lotus to emerge from the clear water. Most women with high cultivation had to use their vitality to adjust their bodies. "Do you think it's time?" Wu Yuding asked. "Yes, it's time." Zhou Xiaonian rolled up the sleeves of her bathrobe and showed Wu Yuding her arms. So beautiful. Even though they were both women, Wu Yuding couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. Her face was full of envy. This kind of skin was pure and natural. "What about the other parts?" Wu Yuding asked. "Take them all off. Let me see if there's anything imperfect. I'll be here to help you adjust it." Zhou Xiaonian pulled her clothes and blushed. "Oh, all of them?" Wu Yuding laughed. "I'm your mother. What are you afraid of?" Zhou Xiaonian pouted and said, "But you're also my mother-in-law. Now I feel like you're checking the goods for your son." Checking the goods. Wu Yuding was shocked by this word. She never thought that her daughter, who had always been reserved, would say such a thing. After thinking carefully, she couldn't help but laugh. Then she said, "Well, whether it's a mother checking her daughter's goods or a mother-in-law checking the goods for her son, I have to take a look, right? How can I know if it's really perfect if I don't take a look? Besides, didn't you ask me to come up here so that I can help you take a look and give you advice?" Zhou Xiaonian rolled her eyes and snorted. She said proudly, "Fine, I'll take a look." Then she took off all of her clothes. Wu Yuding subconsciously swallowed a mouthful of saliva when she caught sight of it. Her daughter's body was really the pinnacle of a woman's body. She didn't look like the plump type, nor was she the skinny type. She was perfect from top to bottom. Every part of her body was in the golden ratio. There were no flaws. When she stood in front of her, she was really the synonym of perfection. She couldn't find a single flaw. "It's already perfect. I'm so jealous, Nian." Wu Yuding sighed and praised, "Nian, your body. The only bad thing is that your waist is too thin. It makes your butt look big." Zhou Xiaonian shyly covered her butt with the back of her hand and said, "Isn't this a good thing? For men it is." Wu Yuding swallowed the second half of her sentence and said, "Your chest is less than D, right? C+. It should be." Zhou Xiaonian was a little distressed. She said, "That's why I want to use the look-preserving pill. If it grows any longer, it will be too big. Too much is as bad as not enough." Wu Yuding laughed and said, "Yes, I feel the same way." She thought for a moment. She had originally prepared something for another family banquet. She wanted to give it to her daughter so that she could use the look-preserving pill. However, on second thought, Zhou Xiaonian's current state had already reached the pinnacle of beauty in the world. No matter how much she wanted to add flowers to brocade, it couldn't compare to the girl's mentality of, "I am the most beautiful person in my life." "Then take it." Wu Yuding gently rubbed her daughter's chest, causing Zhou Xiaonian to scream. Then she smiled and said, "Okay, I've checked the goods for my son. Feels really good." Chapter 720. Zhou Xiaonian pouted and threw herself into Wu Yuding's arms. Until Wu Yuding admitted that Zhou Xiaoduo was her son-in-law, she was the real one. She was just checking her daughter's body. She finally gave up with a red face. Then, she took out the look-preserving pill and threw it into her mouth without any hesitation. In the next moment, a wave of dreamy, illusory yet real smoke quietly rose. Wu Yuding had the urge to sigh. She felt as if she had witnessed history. From now on, there might not be another woman as beautiful as Zhou Xiaonian in the whole world. Now she had her parents by her side. Her family was complete. She had just found a partner in love. She was in the best mood of a young girl. At this moment, Zhou Xiaonian could be said to have nothing more to ask for in this life. She was complete. Therefore, this was the best time. At that time, when the war broke out and the Demon Alliance returned, the whole world would be in trouble. Her daughter's mood would not be as peaceful as it was now. It's really the best choice now, Wu Yuding said quietly. During lunch, Zhuo Xiaonian changed into her white muslin dress again. She walked down the stairs gracefully. Her face was glowing. That kind of extreme beauty made Zhuo Chonglu a little stunned. Is this the little brat that I raised with my feces and urine? Zhuo Chonglu pretended to be shocked. At this moment, his emotions were half real and half fake. He was really amazed, but he was pretending to be teasing. Dad. Zhuo Xiaonian pursed her lips coquettishly. Zhuo Xiaoduo, on the other hand, was stunned. He sat there like a dumb goose, a long line of tears at the corner of his mouth, that the so-called drooling was probably nothing more than this. Damn it! Zhuo Xiaonian was furious. Oh! Zhuo Xiaoduo suddenly jumped up as if he had just woken up from a dream. The tears at the corner of his mouth drew a bright arc as he jumped up and fell to the dust. It was a pity that the three of them did not record it as a memento. Otherwise, it would be a dark history that would never be erased. Ha ha ha. After lunch, Zhuo Chonglu moved a deck chair to the balcony on the third floor to read as usual. Wu Yuding took a nap on the other deck chair. At this moment, the two of them had let go of their worries and enjoyed the little peace and quiet that could be counted with one's fingers. He even looked very lazy. It was as if he had no more desires. Zhuo Xiaoduo followed behind Zhuo Xiaonian like a shadow. He tried his best to find a way to take advantage of her. Zhuo Xiaonian was in a happy and beautiful mood. She did not care about him, but she did not let him touch her. She vividly acted out the saying that the best thing was not to have it. The two of them strolled on the lawn of the villa. Zhuo Xiaonian walked fast and slow, while Zhuo Xiaoduo followed behind her with a silly smile on his face. Occasionally he would jump and sway with each step. Grandma Sher was at the door, peeling a few cloves of garlic in her hands. She was the only one who had the fate to witness the scene. Under the sunshine, the tall and straight young man and girl were chasing each other, laughing and playing. Their whole body was bathed in the warm sunshine, overflowing with happiness and sweetness from inside out. God bless them for a lifetime of peace and joy. Bless this happiness and accompany them until they grow old, until eternity. Grandma Sher's face was full of benevolence. That's great. In the afternoon, Zhuo Xiaonian said that she wanted to rest, so she directly shut Zhuo Xiaoduo outside the door. After being unhappy for a while, Zhuo Xiaoduo finally remembered the important matter. He quickly entered the Tower of Destruction to take a look. But once he entered, Zhuo Xiaoduo was stunned. Is this still my Tower of Destruction? The entire space of the Tower of Emptiness was boundless at first glance. There was a huge mountain at the other end of the tower. It was lush and verdant, and above it, there was a small patch of blue sky. It made Zhuo Xiaoduo feel that this space has transformed into a Shao world. Xiaolong had just moved 1/3 of the earth vein back. He saw the changes of the Tower of Destruction earlier than Zhuo Xiaoduo. He was somersaulting in the air excitedly. It seemed that such a change was a pleasant surprise for him. That's great, that's incredible. Boss, where did you get this good stuff from? Xiaolong was so excited that its dragon eyeballs were bouncing up and down outside of its eye sockets. It scurried in front of Zhuo Xiaoduo and said, Boss, you can do more of this. Do it 10 times, 8 times, 1,000 times. You're so happy. Zhuo Xiaoduo rolled his eyes and said, My whole family mobilized and worked together to extort half a tael. You can continue to mobilize and extort. Xiaolong flew up and down in high spirits and said, Since the other party can give us half a tael, he must have more. It's best to get all of them. The more the better. We won't refuse anyone. This sentence is quite reasonable. Zhuo Xiaoduo could not help but ponder. Kong Xiaodan should have more, right? But how could he get more? At least for a short period of time there should be no chance. Previously, it was his mother who opened her mouth and dug out half a tael. At that time he was already heartbroken. But at that time, he did not know that this thing would be so helpful to the Tower of Destruction. Wait for me to find a chance to work harder. Kong Xiaodan probably suppressed his cultivation level like Bing Xiaobing. His real cultivation level is probably much higher than mine. But it doesn't matter. I'll work hard to cultivate. When I reach Huayun, I'll deal with him. Stop. Don't move. This is a robbery. Hand over the space soil. Wahahadatswa Xiaoduo could not help but laugh wildly when he thought of the bright future. He did not know that Kong Xiaodan's real identity was Witch Dan Kong. Witch Dan Kong gave out half a tael of the space soil because he knew that Swa Xiaoduo did not have the ability to open up the space by himself. This half a tael of the space soil could only be stored in the space ring to collect dust. It was impossible for him to use it. In fact, whether it was Witch Dan Kong or Wu Yuding, no one expected that Swa Xiaoduo would have the Tower of Destruction. Moreover, it was a complete version of the Tower of Destruction that could change the flow of time. Combined with the space soil, it produced an amazing effect in an instant. The origin of the Tower of Destruction was to remember the blood feud created by Witch Dan Kong. However, the great Witch Dan Kong had perfected the Tower of Destruction without his knowledge. Who said that there was no fixed number of things? But this complicated relationship, whether it was Witch Dan Kong, Wu Yuding, or Swa Xiaoduo, none of them knew everything. None of them knew everything. Swa Xiaoduo admired the current state of the Tower of Destruction for a moment. Then he turned to Mr. Sun and used the fastest speed to put the Astral Soul's jade powder that filled the whole field into the Tower of Destruction. As the internal space of the Tower of Destruction increased, the demand for the Astral Soul's jade powder would only increase. It took him less than half an hour to bring it back. When he came back, Swa Chonglu asked Swa Xiaoduo, "What did you do?" Swa Xiaoduo was satisfied and told his father directly, "I went to collect some powder of the Astral Soul's jade powder after cultivation." "What's the use of that stuff?" Swa Zhonglu humbly asked for advice. "It's for the space." Swa Xiaoduo said, "The mountain in my space is made up of the Astral Soul's jade powder. Without a lot of Astral Soul's jade powder as nutrients, the space in my space would not be like this." Swa Chonglu followed his son into the Tower of Destruction again. He was also shocked by the transformation of the Tower of Destruction. "Your space has changed so much. Other than the effect of half a liter of space soil, are you sure it's the effect of the Astral Soul's jade powder?" "Yes. In fact, the first opportunity for the transformation of the Tower of Destruction was the Astral Soul's jade powder that I collected by chance. Of course, the main reason for the transformation now is not the Astral Soul's jade powder." Swa Xiaoduo was not guarded against Swa Chonglu. He was afraid that his father would misunderstand. After thinking for a while, he told him everything, because the biggest difference in my space is that there's a luck dragon in my space. The transformation of the space, the rise and fall of the mountain, and so on are mostly caused by it. Luck dragon? Even with Swa Chonglu's transcendent state of mind, he began to stutter. His eyes almost popped out of their sockets. He knew about the so-called Dragon of Destiny, but this kind of thing had always only existed in legends. He had never heard of such a thing in reality. "You mean that the luck dragon moved the remnants of the dragon vein in here? And then it caused the current situation?" "Yes." After Swa Chonglu understood the whole story, he was silent for a long time. Then he returned to his room and made a phone call. "Yunduo, bring your spatial extermination pagoda and come over." "Oh yes. Send an order to all the states in the world to move all the powders of the Astral Soul's jade powder to Fenghai. This has to be done in secret. Don't let anyone know that I'm using it. And don't let anyone know that you're using it. Just bring it over. Open up a large area outside the city to store the powders. Remember, it's the purest Astral Soul's jade powder. There can't be any impurities. Do it as soon as possible." "Yes." Bai Yunduo was confused when she received the order. However, the execution of the order was flawless. She started to act immediately. With one order, all the experts from S.H.I.E.L.D., the military, and the Nine Heavens Pavilion moved at the same time. The more the better. The faster the better. There can't be any impurities mixed in. Send it to me in Fenghai by tomorrow afternoon at the latest. I want to see the first batch tomorrow morning. I want to see millions of tons of pure powder by tomorrow afternoon. Don't let anyone know that it's my request. Confidentiality level SSS. Those who leak it will be killed without mercy." With one order, the entire Yanwu Empire fell into a state of chaos. People were shouting and horses were shouting, and dogs were jumping over walls. Many influential people in the various cities rushed out of their houses and issued orders as if their butts were on fire. All the space rings with large storage space were collected. Like a bomb, they rushed to all parts of the city, especially the various universities. Requesting monthly votes. Requesting recommendation votes. Chapter 721. Shangjing City. The experts from the top few levels of the Nine Heavens Pavilion were also on the move. In less than half an hour, there were already experts rushing toward Fenghai with a lot of space rings. An hour later, there were also experts from all over the place. 3 hours later, the second batch was also on the way. 6 hours later, the third batch set off with even more space rings. By midnight, there were 6 batches of experts on the way to Fenghai from all over the place. Those who came later stopped collecting space rings in remote areas because they could not make it in time. However, there were still batches of people setting off from areas that were relatively close to Fenghai. Bai Yunduo left the Starry Mountain Range team and went to an open area thousands of miles away by herself. She directly took action and flattened a large area. Then, she propped up a small canopy, which was enough to avoid most of the covetous and peeping eyes. Such a small matter was nothing to a mighty figure like her. As for the rest, they could only wait quietly and observe the changes in the situation. In the afternoon, Zhou Xiaoduo pulled Zhou Xiaonian into the Tower of Annihilation. What is this place? Dog, this place is not bad. Zhou Xiaonian praised. In order to defeat you, I have to put you into 365 different positions, so I specially opened up this space. How thoughtful, right? Zhou Xiaoduo laughed, his face full of mischief. Dog! Zhou Xiaonian exploded on the spot. Come on, come and beat me up. Zhou Xiaoduo laughed heartily with unprecedented arrogance. He flipped over and swung his hand, taking out the 9-9 cat hammer. He assumed a majestic and heroic posture. Missing cat, I won't show you any mercy. Watch me use my 9-9 cat hammer to completely subdue you, missing cat. Zhou Xiaonian gritted her teeth and rushed over. Little dog, I will beat you to death. Wait. Zhou Xiaoduo immediately stopped her. No problem, but let's make things clear first. What if you lose to me? What do you think? You will wear a cat-eared mate costume and dance for me with a cat tail. You don't dare. All right. No problem, it's a deal. But if you lose, you have to wear a dog-eared hat, and you're not allowed to speak until midnight. Even if you want to speak, you can only bark. No problem. It's settled then. Zhou Xiaoduo laughed arrogantly. Nian Nian cat, take my hammer. Get ready to dance. When Li Chenglong came back from school at dusk, he immediately saw Boss Wu wearing a dog-eared hat that he had bought at some point. One of his ears was standing straight, while the other was drooping halfway down. His expression was unusually dejected, and his spirit was even more dispirited. His head drooped listlessly. It was an expression that would make people cry when they heard it. Boss, what are you doing? Li Chenglong almost burst out laughing. Wasn't this dog-eared hat a little too big? From afar it looked like a husky squatting there. Moreover, it was a husky that had lost a battle and was dejected. Woof woof woof. Zhou Xiaoduo barked. Li Chenglong's eyeballs almost popped out. What the fuck? Boss, are you doing performance art? Woof woof woof. Zhou Xiaoduo's eyes were full of resentment. Ha 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 ha. Li Chenglong laughed so hard that he almost peed himself. Zhou Xiaoduo turned around and walked into the living room. Li Chenglong followed him as he stealthily took out his phone and prepared to record. Today, when he went to school, Li Chenglong suffered an unprecedented beating from the whole class. All the students of Class 1 who had been fooled were furious. Even Pai Bao, who had restrained his aura and was becoming less and less noticeable, was furious and rushed up to beat him up. You cheated us of our red packets and turned off your phone. With Meng Zhongjun and Xiang Chong in the lead, all of them charged forward with the momentum of a battlefield, pressing down on Li Chenglong without any regard for their own safety. This beating was really enough to make the sky change color and the sun and moon dim. The most direct result of this was that Li Chenglong was lying in the long-awaited nourishment cabin. At the same time, Li Chenglong was still in a state of shock until the afternoon. Even his legs were trembling. Zhou had the ability to suppress the whole class by himself. What a great ability. But I don't think I have it yet. It's too early to be reckless. This was Li Chenglong's realization after being beaten up. However, when Zhou Xiaonian came out, Li Chenglong, who had already seen her once last night, was shocked again. The thought of taking a picture was thrown away in an instant. Such a beauty. How could a picture capture her charm? Moreover, it was blasphemy to a beauty. Little brother, you must be Li Chenglong. Zhou Xiaonian had seen Li Chenglong before, but they had only met face to face, and they had not seen each other in their original appearance. He did not want to expose Li Chenglong at this moment, or he would have to spend more time explaining. Yes, Li Chenglong stuttered. I'm too nervous. I saw a fairy today. He hurriedly turned to Zhou Xiaoduo, meaning, introduce her to me. Woof 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 woof. Zhou Xiaoduo glared at him. Li Chenglong was stunned. All right. I've removed your ban. Zhou Xiaonian laughed so hard that she held her stomach. Woof woof woof. Zhou Xiaoduo was not going to let it go. A real man must be willing to accept his loss. I must bark until midnight. Actually, what he was most worried about was that it might not be a good thing for his ban to be lifted so easily. What if Nian Nian Cat lost in the future and went back on her word? Therefore, Zhou Xiaoduo would never agree to cancel this agreement even if he was beaten to death. Woof woof woof. Zhou Xiaoduo grimaced. Nian Nian Cat, I must make you dance for me. I must see you dance in a cat-eared maid costume. I'm willing to bark like a dog for a day, so what? How can I give you a reason to go back on your word? You're underestimating your husband. What if one day I win and you say, you've lost so many times before, how many times have you really completed the bet? Then I'll give you the answer. Won't I be dumbfounded on the spot? This has been my greatest wish for so many years. Zhou Xiaonian was smart enough to understand instantly. This bastard, he doesn't want to give me a chance to go back on my word? Isn't he sure that I'll be able to subdue him? She was so angry that she twisted her body and ignored him. Chonglong, sit down. We'll eat in a while. Invite Grandmusher over and let's eat together. Wu Yuding said. Okay. Li Chenglong ran out like a puff of smoke. He stayed in the room for a while, but he felt so nervous that he could die. He couldn't stay calm under such a peerless beauty. Even if I'm the Iron Order's leader, I'm not blind. At night, the six of them had a meal together. Zhou Xiaoduo was still barking, so he tried not to talk and buried his head in the food. Wu Yuding introduced solemnly, sister-in-law Sure. This is Xiaoduo's wife. Do you like her? Grandma Sure didn't care whether Wu Yuding called her sister-in-law or something else. She didn't know how much she had taken advantage of her. She smiled warmly and said with satisfaction, very good. Very satisfied. Very satisfied. 3 veries in a row showed that Grandma Sure was in a good mood and was happy to see it happen. Zhou Xiaonian lowered her head shyly. This was the first time she was introduced as Xiaoduo's wife. Her mood was very strange, and she stole glances at Zhou Xiaoduo from time to time. Zhou Xiaoduo was looking up at her. When he saw Zhou Xiaonian looking at him, he said with a puzzled expression, woof woof woof. Li Chenglong and Zhou Xiaoduo both had vegetable soup on their faces. Grandma Sure couldn't help but spit on Li Chenglong's face. Zhou Xiaonian didn't waste any of her saliva on Zhou Xiaoduo's face. What's wrong? Cough cough cough. Grandma Sure couldn't help but choke. We made a bet that we would win if we fought. If he lost, he would bark like a dog until midnight. Zhou Xiaonian smiled. Now you know whether he won or lost. Ha 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 ha. Li Chenglong secretly aimed his phone at Zhou Xiaoduo. Although he was embarrassed to take a picture of Zhou Xiaonian, he didn't feel guilty about taking a picture of Zhou. This kind of dark history of Zhou was not common, especially when it was an exclusive punishment. How could he not take a picture of it? Zhou Xiaoduo was glaring at Zhou Xiaonian, so he didn't notice the swelling. Class monitor Zhou, when you went to class today, everyone asked when you were going to school. Woof 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 woof. Zhou Xiaoduo winked and gestured. I'll go tomorrow. Don't ask, I can't talk now. Class monitors. Mr. Wen said he has something to talk to you about. I don't know what it is. Why don't you give him a call later? Woof woof woof. Woof woof. Class monitors. What are you doing? Woof woof. Oh woo. Zhou Xiaoduo bit over. This guy obviously had an ulterior motive. Zhou Xiaoduo couldn't see that Li Chenglong had taken out his phone and was typing on it. Even though Zhou Xiaoduo was quick to grab it, the video had already been sent out. It was a foregone conclusion. When he took it back, the target group was silent for a few seconds. Then there was a series of ha ha ha. Zhou Xiaoduo quickly clicked delete, trying to salvage the situation. How could he not know? It was already too late. There were at least 20 people who saw Li Chenglong's account click delete and immediately sent their saved videos to the group. Therefore, the whole group was filled with woof 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 woof. Class monitors was imitating a dog's bark. After a while, Yu Yan'er sent a voice message, "Don't send anymore." Ouch. My stomach is cramping. For a moment, the group was filled with countless voices and laughter. It was like a sea of joy. Even the homeroom teacher, when Xingqian, stood out and said, "This bark is very authentic." Naturally, everyone became more and more cheerful. Woof woof. Zhou Xiaoduo was mad. He took a sip of wine and wrote on the table, "Let's spar tonight. I'll help you consolidate your realm. Let's spar through the night." Li Chenglong said indifferently and pretentiously, "Sorry, I have an appointment tonight." Chapter 722. Who did you invite? It's not me. It's Yang Chong. I don't know what's wrong with his brain, but he wants to challenge me. He wants to ask the experts of the Xiang family to beat me up. Li Chenglong chuckled. Let's meet at 11 o'clock tonight at the school sports field. When I come back victorious, I'll spar with you. We can spar through the night, but it seems like we haven't done so in a long time. Then it's settled. At 12 o'clock that night, Li Chenglong was beaten up until his face was swollen, and he was thrown back by Xiang Chong. This time, I'll beat you until you're not enlightened. Xiang Chong left angrily after saying that. In the afternoon, Xiang Chong couldn't bear it any longer, so he asked Li Chenglong to spar with him. In the end, he was beaten up by Li Chenglong. Xiang Chong was about to go crazy from anger. You're so unromantic. So he told his family and asked Li Chenglong to spar with him without telling his sister. Beat him up. To the Xiang family, he's not enlightened? Easy, beat him up. So tonight, they sent out their elders and experts to beat Li Chenglong until he was dizzy. To the Xiang family, they didn't consider whether this would have a negative effect. They couldn't say anything else. They couldn't say that their daughter has taken a liking to you, so tell me if you're okay with it. That would be so embarrassing. The Xiang family definitely wouldn't do such a thing. According to the style of the overlord family, they would just beat him up a few more times and he would be enlightened. If he still wasn't enlightened, they could only advise their daughter to be more open-minded. Don't hang yourself on a tree. Our Xiang family wouldn't do something like kidnapping someone to be their son-in-law. Li Chenglong was lying on the sofa with a bloody nose and a swollen face. He tried his best to open his panda eyes and look at Zhou Xiaoduo. This is a bit strange. Xiang Chong is such a bastard. He actually sent a senior master to beat me up. This is too much. I didn't expect him to be this kind of person. You really can't judge a book by its cover. After hearing Xiang Chong's words, Zhou Xiaoduo, who already understood everything, suddenly felt that this beating was too light. It was already past 12 o'clock, and the agreement was over. Zhou Xiaoduo, who had the right to speak again, sighed and said, "That's right. You really can't judge a book by its cover. Xiang Chong is really unreasonable. Swollen, this cannot be tolerated. If it were me, I would not be able to take this lying down. A fight is a fight, but why should they send their elders to beat us up? This is not just too much, it's simply too much. I didn't expect Xiang Chong, who looks like a man with thick eyebrows and big eyes, to do such a thing." Li Chenglong, who was provoked, became angrier and angrier. He said, "You think so too, right? This is really too much. I support you in this matter. We can't just let it go. We must seek justice. But it's not fun to just beat up Xiang Chong. Doesn't the Xiang family still have Xiang Bing in our class? You can beat her up tomorrow. Swixiao Duo, who was filled with righteous indignation, came up with a bad idea. They beat you up, so you beat up their daughter. An eye for an eye. It's better than beating up Xiang Chong directly. Li Chenglong hesitated. That's not very good, right? Hiske. You're talking as if you haven't been beaten up before. Swixiao Duo looked at him with disdain. Li Chenglong thought for a while. That's right. Now it's a habit to beat up Xiang Bing when eating and sleeping. I haven't beaten her for a few days, but now she's beaten by the Xiang family. Is it because I haven't beaten Xiang Bing these days? Seeing Li Chenglong cover his eyes and ponder, Swixiao Duo laughed evilly. He tiptoed upstairs and didn't say anything more. If he said too much, the sect leader might come to his senses. Based on his understanding of Xiang Bing, Swixiao Duo guessed that the day when the sect master would be forcefully pushed forward was not far away. That girl wasn't a patient person. Now it's about time. Xiang Bing definitely didn't know that Xiang Chong was beaten up tonight, but she wouldn't do such a thing. Once she knew, she would feel more threatened. She would probably take action immediately. Xiang Chong, Xiang Bing, this is the best I can do as the matchmaker. You don't have to thank me. Swixiao Duo guessed mischievously. What would Xiang Bing do? At that time, would Li Chenglong come crying to me and say that he was ruined? As soon as Swixiao Duo went upstairs, he was caught by Wu Yuding. What's going on? I heard you instigating people to fight, and it's with a girl. You're so mean. No one knows a son better than his mother. Wu Yuding knew Swixiao's bad temper very well. In fact, when Swixiao Duo was 5 or 6 years old, he was beaten up by other kids. When he came back, he said to Zhuxiaonian's sister, "That guy scolded you so badly." When he instigated Zhuxiaonian to beat someone up, Wu Yuding knew that she had given birth to a weirdo. If it were other kids, they would say, "Sister, who beat me up? Wu, go and avenge me." But her child could say, "He scolded you." He did not mention anything about being beaten up. Swixiao Duo was happy. He leaned close to Wu Yuding's ear and explained the whole story in a low voice. He was not being mean. He was facilitating this beautiful thing. At most, he would just watch a few more scenes. This child. Wu Yuding shook her head. This guy likes Xiang Bing too. It's just that he doesn't know it yet. Children are all like this. A little boy likes a little girl, so he bullies her. Wu Yuding sighed. Li Chenglong's IQ has reached a level that ordinary old monsters can't reach. But his EQ is still at the level of a 6-year-old. He's a good man, much better than you. Swixiao Duo felt wronged. Mom, your words hurt me too much. Look at how loyal I am. I've liked Nian Nian Cat since I was 4 or 5 years old. I still like Nian Nian Cat even now. Wu Yuding rolled her eyes and left. You're really promising. In the morning, Li Chenglong went to school alone. Swixiao Duo still did not go. He still had a lot of holidays to go. At this moment, he was dressing himself up. He made himself look heroic and handsome. His face was full of righteousness and confidence. Then he went out with Zhuxiaonian. This day was the big day that Swixiao Duo dreamed of, taking his wife to the Hidden Dragon High School, announcing to everyone that this is my wife. One day, I'll hold Nian Nian Cat's hand and tell everyone that this is my wife. This goal was going to be realized today. Swixiao Duo was in high spirits. He was in the mood to write a poem. Taking a walk with a cat in the Hidden Dragon High School, welcomed by a wave of praise. Come envy, jealousy, and hate. I'll only humph proudly that good poem, good poem. It's really suitable for the occasion. Today, Swixiao Duo walked as if he was floating. It was as if he had a piece of honey in his mouth. It was so sweet that it reached his heart. His mouth was on his ear all the way. Zhuxiaonian was helpless. But this guy came early in the morning to beg, so she had to agree. There will be many occasions like this in the future. I have to get used to it first. Zhuxiaonian thought. Besides, once they confirmed their relationship and announced it, those who had designs on her would shrink back. It would also save her a lot of trouble. So, although she was shy and nervous, she still followed Swixiao Duo. Zhua is bringing his wife to school today. Ever since Li Chenglong said those words in the morning, The whole class didn't split up. Everyone gathered together and waited to see what would happen. Among them, a few of the female students who were interested in Zhuoxiao duo, and were quite confident in their looks, even dressed up secretly. I heard that class monitor's wife was also from Phoenix City. It's a small border town. She's just a country girl. How pretty can she be? I'm going to let Swadabin know that his girlfriend pales in comparison to me. He'll see how good I am later. Otherwise, although this guy's EQ is not low, his performance is better than the leader's. Even when Xingtian was curious about Zhuoxiao's wife, what kind of girl could make that bastard keep his chastity like jade? In school, he didn't even hold the hands of his female classmates. He didn't do anything except disfigure them with a punch and collapse their breasts. I'm so curious. Yi Chongqing, Xiang Kuangren, Lu Yichuan, Chang Gaing, and Vice Principal Gao were also strolling around Class 1. The 5 old men all had their hands behind their backs. They strolled from one side to the office building. When they were about to reach the other side, they strolled back. Then they went to the school gate for an inspection before walking back to Class 1. You must take a good look. Don't just pick a random girl, Xiang Kuangren said to Yi Chongqing. Okay. Yi Chongqing nodded. If they're too bad, we have many young and beautiful girls in the Xiang family. Xiang Kuangren continued. All of them have big breasts and big butts. They're tall and strong. They can definitely give birth to sons. If you're not satisfied with them, I'll ask them to use honey traps. Vice Principal Chang sneered. That's not called honey traps in your Xiang family. Xiang Kuangren was stunned. If it's not called honey traps, then what is it called? Chang Gaing smiled mockingly. It's called honey traps in other families, but in your Xiang family, it's called forcing yourself on her. Yi Chongqing and Lu Yichuan both spat and coughed at the same time. These 2 old fellows simply had no moral integrity today. Among all the students in Class 1, one asked for leave. He said he was going to the bathroom, but he was actually going to the school gate to take a look. Then, he came back with a relaxed look on his face. He was not there yet. Then a few minutes later, someone went to the bathroom again after 7 or 8 people did this in a row. When Xingtian, who had already seen through the truth, sighed helplessly. There's no class today. I'm going to study by myself. You can do whatever you want. After saying that, when Xingtian pulled out a chair and sat at the door, everyone had the same thought. I'm also very curious. If you're not even in the mood to teach, how can you not study by yourself? Is she beautiful? Many people threw this question to the only person in the know, Li Chenglong. Have you seen a fairy before? Li Chenglong asked. They all shook their heads. She's prettier than a fairy. Li Chenglong raised his head and said the words from the bottom of his heart. You've seen a fairy? Xiang Bing immediately felt uncomfortable. No. Then why do you say that? That's what I think. It's a one-sided opinion. What does it have to do with you? Haha, look at you. It's as if she's your wife. Xiang Bing looked at him from the corner of her eyes. Take a piss and look at yourself. Stop dreaming. That's Zhuoxiao's wife. She's someone else's wife. Are you thinking about her? I'm not dreaming and I'm not thinking about her. Li Chenglong glared and said, besides, what does it have to do with you whether I'm thinking about her or not? Do you want to prick me? Do you think I won't beat you up? Xiang Bing's eyes reddened. She puffed out her chest and stepped forward. Don't you dare. I don't dare. Li Chenglong grinned. He rubbed his palms and stood up, ready to punch his chest. Xiang Chong gritted his teeth. Meng Zhangjuan's face was also twisted. Aren't you afraid that your son won't be able to eat after you punch him? At this moment. They're coming. They're coming. Hao Han, who had only half of his head out to investigate in the corner, suddenly shrank back and raised his arms. Boom! Everyone ran out. Under everyone's watchful eyes, they saw Zhuoxiao Duo floating over in high spirits from the direction of the school's gate. As if he was floating, he couldn't control his smug smile. He cupped his hands in salute to everyone he saw. Ha ha, my wife, this is my wife. He laughed so hard that his eyes couldn't be seen. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.